to Miss Martin Muses and another evening of our fantasy tavern where we all gather together and talk about great things in fantasy. And there is no greater fantasy, in my very humble and strong and unwavering opinion, than The Lord of the Rings and the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. And we're here to talk about something very specific, which is the Lady Eowyn. As my guest tonight, we have once again the High King Feanor himself, the one that messed up everything, frankly, didn't he? With his whole, I gotta take the Silmarils and make a little crown and all sorts of stuff, and Kinslayer. It is the one, the only High King Feanor.
Hi, hello. I appreciate the introduction, albeit with slanderous Teleri propaganda. No, thank you for having me on. I've been really looking forward to this. This is going to be a fun talk because, as you and I both have talked previously, we both have a lot to talk about on the subject of Eowyn, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a real nice deep dive. So,
Yes, and of course, Eowyn was a girl boss, if you will, well over 70 years ago. So the people that are acting like there's never been, any women doing anything, it's like, well, yes, there was. But of course, J.R. Tolkien, in my humble opinion, wrote such a masterful character because he also, I believe, really understood women. And speaking of people that understand women, maybe, we have Conroy 1776 and Salty Traveling Sea. I love shield maidens. Yes, everyone loves shield maidens, not the obnoxious ones, but the real one, the shield maiden of shield maidens, Eowyn. So what I'm going to focus on today, of course, is Eowyn in the books. Eowyn in the books, who in many ways I thought was very well portrayed in the movies. But remember, the movies were not perfect. Like, I'm of that opinion. I like the movies for what they are. I enjoy them. I cry often when I watch it. But they did add a bunch of weird stuff with Eowyn, especially in the Two Towers. But we're going to look at her the way Tolkien wrote her. So it's not, we're going to do our best to not delve into the movies, because I think that sometimes the movies can overshadow what Tolkien was conveying. So we're just going to deep dive into that. And with that, I'm going to ask High King Feanor, what do you have to say, like, in general about Eowyn before we dig into her passages in the book?
I would say, just in the grand scheme or in the grand canvas that is the characters that Tolkien wrote, I would say that she arguably, if you were to look at a character arc as like a graph, she probably has one of, if not the best character arcs in the entire Legendarium. From where she starts to where she finishes in the Return of the King. That's the one thing that's always stuck out to me about her as a character, and obviously we'll get into more detail as the stream goes on. But no, absolutely, that's the number one thing that always stuck out to me was just her character arc, and how she progressed as a character. The other thing too is that I'm just trying to think of the best way to phrase this. The way that Tolkien wrote her bravery, it wasn't just because, how they do so many things in modern writing where it's just, you just have the generic girl boss. Her bravery and her fealty to her Lord Theoden and Uncle Theoden, there was purpose behind the actions that she took. She wasn't perfect. Tolkien didn't write her as I know the term gets overused quite a bit oftentimes, but he didn't write her as a Mary Sue. And I think that's also something very important to look at. And I think something that modern writers should look at when they are writing female characters. Is the character of Eowyn. If you really want to learn how to make a really badass character, but also, make her human, give her weaknesses, give her emotions, give her things that she struggles with, I would say she is the quintessential character to do that with and to learn from. So,
wow. Yeah, good point about her arc, because not to denigrate what all the other characters go through, but you're right that she actually seems to have a real transformation. And it's very, very rare that we see that in fantasy with women.
Mhm.
It, in my humble opinion, they're
Yeah.
usually very shallowly, oh my gosh, whatever the heck the word is, written. And you're right that she's not perfect, and we're gonna get into that because this has been a conundrum that I have been trying to work out for years about the choices that she makes, and was she right to make some of the choices that we do? And we have people in the chat doing some very famous Eowyn quotes. Nordporeal life form is here. Hello, thank you for
Hey,
being here. Yeah, because I'm I was rereading some of this stuff, and I'm just like, it never fails how well Tolkien wrote. I
I
mean, that
know.
man, that man. Um, all right. So here's what I want to start off with for a passage. When we first see here, it's in the King of the Golden Hall when Theoden and is being all Theoden-y, and
Mhm.
Gandalf and all them come in, and Aragorn is looking at the king. This is after he's been kind of relieved, if you will, after Gandalf does his thing. And he goes, "Go, Eowyn's sister daughter, the time for fear is past." The woman
Mhm.
turned and went slowly into the house. As she passed the door, she turned and looked back. Grave and thoughtful was her glance as she looked on the king with cool pity in her eyes. Very fair was her face, and her long hair was like a river of gold. Slender and tall she was in her white robe girt with silver, but strong she seemed, and stern as steel, a daughter of kings. Thus Aragorn, for the first time in the full light of day, beheld Eowyn, Lady of Rohan, and thought her fair, fair and cold, like a morning of pale spring that has not yet come to womanhood. And she now was suddenly aware of him, tall heir of kings, wise with many winters, grey cloaked, hiding a power that yet she felt. For a moment, still as stone, she stood. Then turning swiftly, she was gone.
Mm.
That's her introduction.
It's so good. Like,
No, let's just reread that. No, it says 1,000 things. That's just one paragraph. I
yep.
mean,
Well,
but
it's kind of like the meme, right? You know, Tolkien will take 5 pages and talk about a tree. You know, like
mhm,
when he goes into his character descriptions, he goes into detail, and it's good. It's really really good.
mhm.
Um, for a person's imagination when they're reading it, so they have those exact details of um a character's demeanor, how they present themselves, everything like that. Um, the one thing that immediately that kind of stands out to me with this particular sequence of events is that Eowyn is introduced as very stern, but also that there is kind of a softer, caring side to her, I guess, especially in like as you in some of the previous passages right before that,
Mhm.
um, in the caring of Theoden, um, or in her caring of Theoden, I should say. Um, like you can see there's kind of already, I guess, kind of a conflict going on within the character of Eowyn.
Yes.
Um, it's at least hinted at, I should say. Um, at least that's what I see from just these brief passages, just introducing her as a character.
Yeah. And I should point that out. Yeah, I said that's how we're introduced to her, but there are a few passages of sentences before where, as you said, she's standing by Theoden up
Mhm.
there. But yeah, and the way she's so cold,
Mhm.
but also so warm. We find her warm side later, but the fact that when he just goes, "The daughter of kings," and you're just like, "Damn it, yes, she is."
Yep.
And I must say, as a girl, the whole description of her dress and her long flowing hair, I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell
Right.
yeah." We women have done that kind of thing at Halloween now. If my hair is dark brown, not golden like hers, but yeah, I've done the Eowyn thing, the cosplay, and it's just you want to dress like her and so feminine. Um,
Right.
and yet so powerful. But before we continue, it is none other than the Nordporeal life form has given us a $2 super chat, or rather me. But thank you for being here, Hi King. How far are you in the Shadow Rising, Teresa? Oh, thank you. I am actually up to page 300. I had to slow down. It was ridiculous because stuff happened. I had a whole bunch of contracts this week and I wasn't able to read, but I did get up to well past 300, rather. I did that in like 2 days. He's talking about the Wheel of Time, of course, and they're amazing. And we're going to be going through these. Nordporeal, we need to get in touch about doing the third book, rather. This is the fourth book of the Wheel of Time. I have committed to finish the entire Wheel of Time during this year. So thank you for that. Yeah. Oh, he already said it. We need to talk Dragon Reborn. Yes. And and then he also has a question for you, Hi King. Theodore, how's the vid coming along?
Slowly. With the past 2 health incidents that I've had, it's like I really and work, obviously I really haven't had much time to do anything at all. But no, I'm getting back to it. And to answer a question that you also asked above, buddy. Yeah, no, I'm feeling a lot better. Yeah, I just overworked myself. So, but yeah, no, vid's gonna be coming along. It's probably not gonna be out for like at least another month or two because it's gonna be a long boy. I don't know if I told you, Teresa. The video I'm doing is a retrospective on the Lord of the Rings films.
Ooh.
And how they might have unintentionally contributed to the dog water adaptations that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know the video is not going to be pleasantly received by some, but it's going to be an honest video. I'm going to put a lot of, it's going to be objective. It's not going to be just blind criticism. So yeah.
No, I can see that point. Even today, when I rewatch The Fellowship of the Ring, there's always a moment that just is jarring for me when Arwen appears as Glorfindel. And, she's supposed to be Glorfindel. And it's just like, still, it's like she's not supposed to be here. And I think that this is a discussion we need to have, especially with some of these latest projects that Peter Jackson is involved with. I know some people have tried to be all, well, it's not really Peter Jackson. He's just, the producer and stuff. It's like, no.
Right.
I don't buy that. Well, Game of Thrones, the TV show, ruined everything. I think we all agree with that. Glorfindel or Glorfindel. Actually, I don't know. My pronunciation of Tolkien's things is very weak. How do you call it?
I say Glorfindel.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. What he said. Yeah. Yes. I always get everyone else to pronounce things. And for that $2 super chat, you, sir, get a rose. Yay. Okay. So, yeah, going back to this, what we see with her, again, we get her background. She's a daughter of kings. She's very cold. She's very beautiful. And there was something about her that Aragorn obviously is attracted to. Don't get that. That's the wrong word. But you know what I mean when I say attracted. Yeah. He's attracted to her. He knows he's engaged and all that. But engages him. I mean, I don't know what the right word is, but he feels for her when he sees her.
True. In Aragorn's long life, it's probably not the kind of woman that he's probably encountered before. I would say, at least it's not mentioned directly by Tolkien. So it might have been just like the shield maiden archetype, if you will, might not be something that he is too familiar with. So he might just be like taken aback, like, huh, that's it's an interesting woman right there.
Yeah.
But
well, and I think it says something about Aragorn too, that he is empathetic. To women, and up to them we've only seen interactions with dudes. Though there was a small moment in the Fellowship where he's hanging out with Arwen, and from a distance they're like, "Hey, who's that chick?" And it's like, it's Arwen. Basically, that's all Arwen we really see until the Return of the King. But that to me is what makes Aragorn also an attractive character, because as women, I will just say it, we always get that little soap opera thing going. That's why we feel the way we feel about Mr. Darcy, for example. But it's like a dude who sees the plight that a woman's in and is sympathetic to her and caring. We find that very attractive. So that makes Aragorn a very attractive character to me. Like, he's not like Conan. Well, Conan actually has some empathy actually in Robert on Howard stories, but you know what I mean? He's not a barbarian. He's just not a dude that swings a sword. He's a guy who understands and is, that's why we all want to marry him. But after Faramir. Faramir's my first husband. Aragorn's my second. Yeah, I'm big love. Let's see. Nerdporial says, book Aragorn, imagine his Bashki design instead of Vigo. Yeah. How long were Aragorn and Arwen a thing? Decades. I believe that they were actually more than decades. It was maybe more than 100 years, if I'm correct. I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, let me see here. I can actually, I have the appendix right. I have the appendix right in front of me.
Yay.
Let's see here.
Yeah, it was a long engagement, and if they were, and since Tolkien doesn't do the sex stuff, Aragorn must have taken a lot of cold showers because he's a gentleman.
So, just real quick, since Nerdporial asked, the year was 2951 of the Third Age. So 2951, and then the ring was destroyed. Yeah. Well, the company leaves Rivendell. Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah. Gollum is. Yeah. Oh, okay. So
go ahead.
Hold on. I'm just making sure I got all my years right.
Probably saying he was 87, and off the top of my head, I'm like, that might be correct. I might have messed up.
He was born March 1st, 2931. So he would have been 30? Or no, he would have been 20. He was 20 years old. Yeah, when he met Arwen, yeah.
Dude, she is a cradle robber. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Come on, isn't she?
It's really.
Is that even legal? Do elves have any rules about that? But okay, and let me maybe make it an aside here. I thought I mess up with the Lord of the Rings stuff. I mean, it's kind of like the Bible, if you will. You can't memorize everything, and sometimes I totally forgot about that. But of course, now I'm remembering. Yes, Aragorn was not that old. I was more thinking about his age when he passed away.
Yeah,
yeah. So we mess up, and we have to look things up here. Right. We're not going to pretend. DJ Play Nice, thank you for being here. Yay, thanks for hosting. Have an awesome show. Thank you very much. Thank you for being around. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And okay, yeah. So to move back to Eowyn, the next time we kind of see an important thing, Theoden and all them, they're off to fight or go to Helm's Deep, and Eomer, of course, is with them. Mm-hmm. So he's like, well, everyone, I have no child. This is Theoden. Theodred is my son is slain. I name Eomer, my sister's son, to be my heir. And if neither of us return, choose a new lord as you will. But to someone I must now entrust my people that I leave behind to rule them in my place. Which of you will stay? No man spoke. Is there none whom you would name? In whom do my people trust? In the house of Errol, answered Haman. But Eomer I cannot spare, nor would he stay, said the king, and he is the last of that house. I said not Eomer, answered Haman, and he is not the last. There is Eowyn, daughter of Eamon, his sister. She is fearless and high-hearted. All love her. Let her be as lord to the Eorlingas while we are gone. He goes, "It shall be so," said Theoden. "Let the heralds announce to the folk that the lady Eowyn will lead them." Then the king sat upon a seat before his doors, and Eowyn knelt before him and received from him a sword and a fair corslet. Yea, I love clothes. "Farewell, sister daughter," he said. "Dark is the hour, yet maybe we shall return to the Golden Hall. But in Dunharrow the people may long defend themselves, and if the battle go ill, thither will come all who escape." "Speak not so," she answered. "A year shall I endure for every day that passes until your return." But as she spoke, her eyes went to Aragorn, who stood nearby. Soap opera moment. "The king shall come again," he said. "Fear not west but east does our doom await us." So
Mhm.
yay! So, I like that because it shows that the people love her, that
Yeah.
she's mm, and even though she's a chick, he's like, "But there's no dudes." And they're like, "No, no, we want Eowyn."
Right. And it kind of shows that like if you put it, if you're kind of balancing the scales of what you want in a leader, you know, the people of Rohan obviously see, and this almost kind of gives you a little bit of backstory into Eowyn from the POV of the people of Rohan, where they're
Mhm,
seeing her as both a strong leader, but she's also incredibly kind. You kind of need that balance, which makes them immediately go to, yes, we would like Eowyn, please. you
mhm,
know?
yeah.
It gives you more insight into her character in kind of not a roundabout way, but just from just an outside point of view.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and I love it. That's just all I gotta say. And she's
Right.
also a cupbearer. I forgot,
Yes.
I skipped that part. It's not huge, but she's the cupbearer, and she brings the cup to the king, and she's like, "Receive now this cup and drink in happy hour. Health be thee with thee at thy going." And of course, when she goes to Aragorn, she looked upon him, and her eyes were shining, and he looked down and smiled. But then when he noticed that she had some issues, what is it? She trembled at his touch. "Hail, Aragorn, son of Arathorn," she said. "Hail, Lady of Rohan," he answered. But now his face was troubled, and he did not smile. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, hmm,
I wonder about that with Aragorn, because something similar happens later on in an interaction between him and Eowyn, and I can't help but think that it's some kind of foresight
hmm,
where he's like, you know, it's going to be kind of a long, arduous road for her, kind of thing, and he can kind of see that already, and it hasn't even happened yet. Um, which would make sense for Aragorn specifically as a character being Numenorian. Um,
hmm,
they they do due to bloodlines and all that. That's for an entirely different conversation, but they do, to a certain extent, do have the gift of foresight, much like the elves. Um, so I
yeah.
think there's something there, and we'll get to the other part where I think that this is definitely the case. But what I find interesting is that after this interaction and the departure from Meduseld, we don't hear from her for another 200 pages.
Nope.
We don't hear a single thing about it at all, pretty much until after the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah. And long after that,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually, it struck me at this point, Awen has maybe seen Aragorn twice, and
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of what they're gonna say when they Eowyn-splain. That's what I call it in Return of the King. A lot of people are Eowyn-splaining. Even my man Faramir is Eowyn-splaining, where they're like, you didn't love him, you loved what he represented. Because look how
Mm-hmm.
quickly she's just like, "Oh my gosh." And it's like, hey, you couldn't have just fallen in love with him that fast, that you looked up to him like the way Faramir will say, like a soldier looks up to his captain. So
Right.
it's obvious that this is why it makes so much sense what happens in Return of the King. That it's like, yeah, this not only do not see her, these interactions are very, very short.
Right, and she very mystified by him.
Mhm.
Obviously, this isn't the kind of man that comes into Rohan very often. He's a tall, kingly man, but he's somewhat grim, and clad in gray. Obviously, he's been pretty much on the just roaming the wilds with his friends, hunting down uruks. Like, that's all. So a mix of being mystified and bit bewildered, I suppose, and also like you say, kind of immediately having a what's the word I'm looking for? Being endearing towards him, I guess would be the best word. I don't know if that would be the correct word to describe it, but infatuated, I guess, would be a better word.
Yes.
Being infatuated with him. But
Yeah. Good point. And I do like the fact that you also mentioned earlier that remember that she isn't really seen till after the Battle of Helm's Deep, that everything that was in the movie, of course, that doesn't exist. That
yeah,
she stayed back, and the last that we see of her before they go off to Helm's Deep, I love this. It says, "Alone, Eowyn stood before the doors of the house at the stairs head. The sword was set upright before her rather, and her hands were laid upon the hilt. She was clad now in mail, and shone like silver in the sun." It's like, dude.
it's such a great image, isn't it?
Yes.
It's so
I
good.
mean, if I could paint, I would paint that.
Right.
Because, yeah. And so she's clad in mail, and just she's in charge now. It's really great. It's great honor, and that's what this whole interaction with Aragorn later. He kind of mentions that a lot to her. It's like, girl,
you don't realize how important of a charge has been put in your hands here. Like,
yeah.
And even if the songs don't sing, the singers don't sing about it, it's still valorous what the charge that you've been tasked with. It's a very good points he makes.
Yeah, precisely. And I was going to say, well, we're going to just have to then move on to Return of the King, because that's the next time we see her, when she's back at. I always get my cadences wrong. I always call it Dunharrow. Is that correct? Is that the correct
Dunharrow?
cadence?
I've always called it Dunharrow. Dunharrow, some people say.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it gets kind of weird and desperate, because when they go back, it's after everything that happened with Saruman and the like, and they're back there, and Eowyn meets him, and she is, what is it he says, that her braids, I like her braids. Like, I just love all the hair. That
Right.
he knows how to write with chicks because we like the hair. And Eowyn
I can't help. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't help
go ahead.
that might be, not just that he knows quite a lot about women, but I'm sure there was like some sort of I'm trying to some kind of an assist, if you will, from Edith Tolkien, his wife. Probably, maybe like when I just imagine this. Of course, there's nothing to prove this with, but I imagine like he's in his study writing all this stuff down, and he's writing about Eowyn, and she's like, "Oh, hey, you might want to include like the braids in her hair or something like that, just to add more, add more touch to it." But but who knows? That there's no letters to corroborate that either way. But it's just a fun little theory that I've always had. Excuse me. When it comes to Tolkien and how he wrote his female character, because you're right, he did an incredible job.
Yeah, and also kind of practically, because a woman would need to braid her hair if she has long hair. That's one of the things that I've noticed that fantasy movies definitely get wrong often, where the women are like riding on their horses and their hair's flying everywhere. And I'm like, okay, you just gave the enemy a good thing that they can just tug on, or that you can get tangled up in. Like, there was a reason Joan of Arc cut her hair.
You're 100% correct. My mom used to, when she was in her early 20s, she used to show horses. Her and my grandpa, they would go around the country and just show horses. And yeah, she would say the same thing. She's like, you do not want to ride a horse with your hair down. You just don't want that bundled up. because it flies in your face and gets everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I'll say this, that I will often put up my hair, especially if I'm performing like my instrument. I will always try to tie it up even in a bun and stuff, because the last thing you want to do is to get a big handful. And it's a little bit of a digression, but then again, just is some of the details that I just remember about her every time I read her. Um, but we're going to now move into that discussion that he has with Eowyn. That's when he says he's going to take the paths of the dead. And she
Hmm.
says, Aragorn, why will you go on this deadly road? Because I must. Okay, I shouldn't laugh, but in case. Then she goes, Lord, if you must go, then let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril and battle. So this is the first time she actually comes out and says it. For I am
Hmm.
weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril and battle. And he goes, your duty is with your people. And this, I'm kind of sympathetic to that. And she goes, too often have I heard of duty, she cried, but am I not of the house of Ao, a shield maiden, not a dry nurse? I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Since they falter no longer, it seems, may I now spend my life as I will.
Mm.
And you may do that with honor, he answered. But as for you, lady, did you not accept the charge to govern the people until their lord's return? If you had not been chosen, then some marshal or captain would have been set in the same place, and he could not ride away from his charge were he weary of it or no. So he's even saying, hey, even if it was a dude,
Yeah.
it's like it's nothing about you being a woman and all that, but she does seem to feel a little bit bitter about being left behind, and I think that that goes more to something that is within her that we've been seeing, especially when she says, "Do I have to be a dry nurse?" Which is, nursing like the old and the elderly and always having to help people, I guess is what she's saying.
Mm.
Yeah. Here, just a
And,
second before. I'm sorry. Before you do that, I need to acknowledge this late fee. Thank you, Adega Outlaw. $1.99. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being here. And you, sir, get. Yeah, I'm still working on super the super chat. What do you call it? Segues. Okay, I'm
the
sorry. Go ahead.
segues, the timing. No, it's very interesting. So, I was thinking when I was reading through this passage, I couldn't stop thinking about. I'm sure you're familiar with Haleth of the Haladan from the First Age,
Hmm.
um, and she is a very similar character to Eowyn in the sense that Tolkien really only ever wrote two quote unquote shield maidens. Haleth and Eowyn. Those are really the only two. There's a lot of people who want to say a young Galadriel was that. She was not that.
No.
I don't care what anybody says. That's just not the case. No, the only two were Haleth and Eowyn. And I feel like a lot of stuff in the Third Age with a lot of different characters, you're seeing Tolkien show, I guess, what would have happened had a character made a different decision. I think this is kind of the case with Eowyn when compared to Haleth, because with Haleth, after her, first of all, she was put into the position as leader through very different circumstances. Both her brother and her father were killed by orcs. And then she bravely defended the fort that they were in until Caranthir came and saved the day and rode the orcs into the river. When Caranthir offered to give them a plot, so to speak, in his lands, she declined it, and she went on to lead the Haladan, who eventually dwindled, and she died, I think, childless as well. She didn't take anybody as a husband, never had any kids, and then just the Haladan just kind of disappeared from history. Whereas you have Eowyn in kind of a similar way being told, you know, hey, you should stay in Meadowseld, you should look after your people, you should do all this. And as we find out later on, she chooses not to do that, and she ends up having, I guess, kind of a more positive life outcome than Haleth.
Mhm.
And I really see that as kind of like Tolkien showing, like I said before, Tolkien showing us a kind of a what if scenario, so to speak, with a very
Hmm.
similar character. Because
Oh,
had Haleth decided, okay, yes, we're gonna reside in the lands of Caranthir, we're gonna prosper here, maybe their numbers would have grown, maybe she would have taken a husband, had kids, blah 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 blah, all that sort of thing, just choices and consequences, so to speak. And I really think that that's what Tolkien is alluding to here, because like I said, he only ever wrote two. One's in the first age, one's in the latter part of the third age.
mhm.
So, and the ultimate defeat of so I don't know. I see that parallel there. I don't know about you or anybody else in chat, but that's definitely something that as I was reading that, I was like, there's a parallel here that definitely can be drawn.
No, that's an interesting point, and, he was a deep thinker, so I could see him doing that. Like, for example, a lot of the writings that are being published from him nowadays, I mean, it's basically his notes at this point. So we
Right.
know that he just sat around and thought about it all the time and jotted down all
Hmm.
sorts of different ideas. And that's a very interesting perspective. But I kind of relate to her maybe a little too much. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here because this is one of the things I was actually able to cut and paste. Maybe I relate a little bit too much to Eowyn at this point because he's like, "Listen, you're doing a good deed. You're doing this." And she's like, "No, but I want to go out and face peril." And he goes, "You know, you've been your duty is with your people, and it's like, "You were chosen to do this." And she goes, "Shall I always be chosen? Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart to mind the house while they win renown and find food and beds when they return?" And the whole thing, "Shall I always be chosen?" It's a thing that I've always faced, and I think a lot of people do as well, where it's like, why do I always have to be the person to do the right thing? Why do I always have to be the person to be nice, for example, when everyone else can be an asshole, but I'm expected to do the right thing? And I
Right.
remember something similar to my mom once when I was younger, because I have a pretty strong moral compass, and and I'm like, but why does doing the right thing always leave you often lonely or alone, or um not even sometimes you get punished for doing the right thing, if you will, like people that maybe have to leave their job. That's not necessarily a situation with me, but I've seen people have to do that because their consciences couldn't be in a dishonest situation. And my mom just goes, "Yes, that is what it's like. If you're going to do the right thing in your life, yeah, you're probably going to be." And I
Right.
remember being very struck by that, and she's like, "But you're still doing the right thing." But, if you're doing the right thing looking for a reward, you're not gonna get it. You don't do it. This is something from the Once Upon a Time, going into that, where Rumpelstiltskin, the character at the end, says, "I finally figured out that you don't do the right thing for a reward. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But you still struggle with it because it's like, shall I always be chosen? Oh, I'm always the one who has to sit back and get everything ready for everyone else." And then he goes, "Hey, a time may be soon when none will return. Then there will be need of valor without renown." Because that's what she's talking about, valor without renown. He's like, "Yeah, you're going to have valor without renown, for none shall remember the deeds that are done in the last defense of your homes. Yet the deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised." So he is
Hmm.
answering that in her. It's like, yeah, but guess what? You know what I'm saying? Just because it's not noticed doesn't mean it's not right, doesn't mean it's not moral and the damn right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's it's very well. And the other part of this too, I was just thinking about is Aragorn has seen in his long history so much war and chaos and a whole bunch of other different things. It's like he's almost kind of warning Eowyn, like you know, he's almost giving her a pep talk, but at the same time giving her a warning, like, that there's, you know, there will be need of valor without renown, but just stay in Meadowseld. you know, you
Yeah,
know?
be careful what you wish for. You
Yeah,
just
be
might get
careful what
it.
you wish for. But kind of going back to that though, going back to the contract. I just want to mention this real quick before I forget it. Um, I wonder if the lesson that Tolkien was trying to show the reader was the only um the only opportunities that you miss are the ones that you don't take. Um,
Mm.
And again, going back to Haleth and the comparison with Eowyn, obviously anybody who's seen the films or read the books knows that Eowyn ultimately does take her opportunity, albeit a little bit sneakily, and chooses to go forth to war. But I wonder if that could that have been the message, possibly, is just kind of take your life into your own hands, so to speak, and just kind of figure it out, as you go,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I don't know, but no, going back to what you pulled up, the deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised. I think that's an incredibly poignant statement from Aragorn. Like, listen, you know, it doesn't matter if people sing about it or not. The fact of the matter is that the valiant deeds happened. That's what
Mhm.
matters. It doesn't matter if they sing about you or write stories about you. At the end of the day, what you did matters, regardless of how much praise you get.
Mhm. And this is probably something that Tolkien himself felt, and many parents will say, is that when you look at his life being, a professor, and in his letters, he was family was number one for him, and he
Yeah.
once had a kid that was sick, and all the sacrifices that he and his wife made, and no one sits around and goes, "Wow, dad works really hard and helps his family." Like, that doesn't make headlines. So, perhaps that was something he felt as well, that,
Right.
but of course he did believe, obviously, that they are great because they are unpraised, and who knows, maybe Aragorn's thinking a little bit about himself at this point.
True.
You know
A lot of the deeds during Aragorn's life, up until shortly before this point, shortly before he's even introduced in the Lord of the Rings, a lot of his deeds, they are done under an alias. People don't know that he's Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the last heir
Mhm.
of Isildur. I
He's
can't remember all of
Strider.
his. He's Strider. I can't remember. He had a couple other names. I can't remember what the Rohirrim called him.
Yeah.
But he had a couple other names, and he always, so a lot of his deeds, his heroic deeds up until that point, were thankless, but he still did them anyway. So
Yeah.
that there's a lot to be said there from the point of view of Aragorn, being like, listen, I've lived long enough and experienced this myself. Trust me, it's okay to have do good and not get thanks for it. So
Yeah. Yeah, Shamash, thank you for being here. He's or she, I'm not sure what, is saying that maybe he's just talking against the glorification of war because, obviously being a vet himself of World War I and World War II, that maybe
mm,
that might be something he's thinking of.
that's very plausible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and let's see. Then Aragorn actually goes on, or rather, Eowyn says, and okay, I must admit I've heard this. Unfortunately, that some of the feminists of nowadays ruined it for everybody else, but there
Hmm.
is some truth to this kind of an attitude. All of your words are but to say you are a woman and your part is in the house. But when the men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more. But I am of the house of Ael and not a serving woman. I can ride and wield blade, and I do not fear either pain or death. What do you fear, lady? He asked. A cage, to stay behind bars until youth and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall or desire.
Mm.
Boom. There's a lot more going on, obviously, with her.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I kind of feel like the part where she says all your words are but to say you're a woman and your part is in the house, I kind of feel like she's in a way projecting her own insecurities, or not insecurities rather, but she's projecting her own fears onto Aragorn, where she doesn't she obviously doesn't want to be a woman just serving in the household. She wants to go and ride and fight, and she's kind of making the assumption that that's what Aragorn is telling her, which I don't think is the case at all, because Aragorn's can discern very well, like, okay, she has the capability to fight, she definitely has the heart to fight, but this is her charge, she should do it, and I know enough about war to know that war is not pleasant, and she might, be biting off more than she can chew here, so to speak.
Yeah.
Given her own inexperience.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when she says, "But we have to stay in the house, but you have leave to be burned in the house."
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps she's seen that, maybe not personally, but knows of that. It's like, it's like women we're vulnerable, and sure, I'll stay in the house and get killed. And then when he really gets to the heart of it, when the whole thing, well, what do you fear? He just asks her, and she goes, a cage. So she feels entrapped.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think goes along with the point I made about her. She projects that fear and then admits that fear, so to speak. She doesn't want to be caged up. She wants to be on horseback and ride into battle and death and glory and all that. Which is why I really like what Aragorn says next, where he says, "And yet you counseled me not to adventure on the road that I had chosen because it is perilous." He's like, you're kind of being a bit of a hypocrite here, lady. Oh man.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and and then the next day, as she's bidding them all farewell, and he's being nice, saying, drink to the fortunes of your house. And she's like, will you go? And he says, I will. He says, well, now wilt thou not let me ride with this company as I have asked? I will not, lady. So he's like, kind of, at this point, he's like, dude, for I cannot. Well, and it's like, girl, stop. For that I could not grant without leave of the king and of your brother. You see, good point there. See, she doesn't quite. He's saying, what you're wanting is kind of out of order. They will not return until tomorrow, but I count now every hour, every minute. Farewell. And then she fell on her knees, saying, I beg thee. Now, I got to admit, if a dude or a chick is suddenly on her knees begging me, that is more than awkward. It's like, whoa.
Right.
And he's like, nay, lady. Taking her by the hand, he raised her. Then he kissed her hand, sprang into the saddle, and rode away. And only those who knew him well and were near to him saw the pain that he bore. So,
and I think this is the part I was talking about, where I was saying like that foresight pops up again. I it's obviously not stated, but I really think that's what the case is here, where it's like he knows come hell or high water, this woman's going to get on a horseback and ride into battle, and he's like dreading that. Like he's like, maybe he's thinking, oh man, maybe I should have taken her with her. Maybe the road that I would have taken her on would have been the safer road. There's a myriad of different things that could be going on in his mind at this point.
Yeah. And of course, just basically that he's, as he's shown so far, he's definitely sympathetic to her, and he likes her. Obviously, that's what I meant when I said there was something in her that attracted him, but just not as a lover. And I forgot to say that she even goes, the only reason these people are going with you is because they would not be parted from thee because they love thee. And you're thinking that maybe is that her speaking to him, like that she loves him, a confession. But on the other hand, it's like, girl, you've only seen him at this point 3 times.
Right.
Yeah. Which goes to what we're going to find later when they Eowyn splain, where they're like, hey, you didn't really love Aragorn. You loved the idea of Aragorn. I want to say hi to Waka Zashi's Tea House. Happy Sunday from Japan. Thank you for being here. We're talking Eowyn. But yeah, I told you that this thing strikes me because I'm sympathetic to both attitudes.
Yeah.
Because Eowyn at this point, and she's a normal human, she is 24 years old. And women at that point, when they're 24, they're getting close to what would be like old maidenhood. Like she should have at this point been married. She should have been looked after a little bit better. And that women, when especially back then, but even nowadays, I mean, your life is passing you by. So when she's really thinking, I'm just going to be left behind to be an old maid and just serve everybody and not do what I want. And if I can't, so let me at least get valor. I've
Right.
always, wondered why she's 24 and a daughter of kings and has not been married off. She should have been.
Well, I almost wonder too, because of Theoden being in somewhat of a, I guess, kind of a, trying to think of the right word, in a diminished state, I guess would be, because of Grima and by extension Saruman. I wonder if not having, I wonder if this kind of goes into not really having a father figure around. It has a lot to do with her impulsiveness. And she just looks around, she sees these brave warriors, and she just feels the call to glory, so to speak. Because for the longest time, she was just caring for Theoden. Theoden had been diminished quite extensively by the leechcraft of Wormtongue. And I just wonder if Theoden had been not necessarily in his prime, but at least the Theoden that we see post Grima, if Eowyn would be as impulsive as she is. Because like you said, she's 24. She should already be just kind of settled, so to speak. But I genuinely wonder if that's the case. And I'm sorry if you hear a cat meowing in the background. Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Okay, yeah, so I'm sitting here yapping, and it's like, I'm going, yes, I'm agreeing with you. And, yeah, my goodness, I don't know. I think I pulled out my thing when I was turning the pages. No, but everything that you said, yes, absolutely. And I think that that's why, like, all of that is why when she sees Mary almost in the exact same situation where he's like, I want to fight, I want to go. And why did you give me a sword if you didn't want me to fight by your side? And Eowyn goes, and it's like, well, she was the one that gave him his sword and all of that and the little armor. And she was saying, my heart tells me that you will need such gear in the end. So she was maybe saw her opportunity with Mary and that saw a kindred spirit in her. And when she, as, Durnhelm puts him up on her horse, she says, where will once not a way open, so we say, you wish to go thither with the Lord of the Mark. I see it in your face. I do. Then you shall go with me. Such goodwill should not be denied. Say no more to any man, but come. So that's her. Like she sees herself in Mary. It's like
right.
She had the goodwill. It's like, why would that goodwill be denied? So, and of course we know that they have a great bond there. Now at this point, I want to ask you specifically the big question that I still wrestle with that we've hinted at before. Was she wrong in doing this? Because we know that everything that's being set in motion is going to lead to the defeat of the Witch King. On the other hand, everything we know is, girl, you had a charge and you left it. You left your post. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I agree in the sense that, or I believe in the sense that, yes, she had a charge that she should have adhered to and just done her duty in that regard. However, given and again, this is really hard to do, knowing what eventually takes place. but I'm thinking to myself, Theoden, just thinking from a strategic viewpoint, Theoden needs every rider he can get.
Mhm.
I believe he even says I believe it's in the Muster of Rohan chapter when the the man from Gondor arrives with the red arrow. He says,
Mhm.
we could, we if you would have came to us beforehand, I'm paraphrasing, but we could have mustered 10,000 spears and smashed the armies of Mordor. But the best I can do right now is 6,000.
Yeah.
Like we're pretty diminished in that regard. So I think I personally believe she made the right decision, from both from a moral standpoint and from also a genuinely helpful standpoint, especially when you look at it in hindsight after everything else takes place. Um, because she didn't go there just for her own glory. She obviously had a deep love for Theoden, her uncle, her brother Eomer, who was also at the Pelennor Fields. And as we find out, her contribution was pretty great. Um, so I would have to, if I'm putting this in a matter of weighing it out in my mind, I'd be like 60% yes, she made the right decision, 40% no is kind of
Mhm.
how I'd weigh the scales on it.
Yeah. Well, and I think personally that once the outcome happens, it happens, and that there apparently been a prophecy or something that no living man can kill the Witch King, that maybe people realize that everything that was set in motion was leading to that point, where she was the one. Like, could someone else literally have done it? Yes.
True.
But that there was a sense of destiny perhaps in it, but I like to think about it that she was absolutely wrong but absolutely right, and she was absolutely right but absolutely wrong, and that's why I have issues with the whole thing.
Right. Well, and
Damn you, Tolkien.
we're going to get more detail on this later, but going back to the Haleth comparison, you know, let's say she does stay in Meadowsill, and she just acts as a caretaker of the throne, and
Mhm,
Theoden doesn't come back, and then maybe the Witch King is defeated, maybe he isn't, and then there's a whole assortment of different things that might not happen. I don't think she would have met Faramir had she not gone to Pelennor Fields.
mhm,
Um, and her fears might have come to pass. She might have ended up like Haleth with no child, no husband, just sitting in old age waiting to die.
mhm. Yeah.
So I really I now I'm leaning kind of 70-30 on it.
Yeah, like I said, and that's what makes Tolkien such a great writer
Yeah.
is he doesn't give us easy answers on these things. I just want to say hi to all the people coming in, and Architectural Outcast Life. Thank you for being here. I Grima's Mind Games. Actually, we haven't gotten into that. We will in a little bit. Yeah, that could also have played a role in. Well, we know it's a played a role in
Yeah,
some of her mindset, because they say who knows, what was whispered to her,
a big
and
role, and Eomer saw it too, which is why Eomer threatened to kill Grima in the halls.
yeah.
Based Eomer. Um, uh, yeah, that's 100%. Although I feel like, I guess to answer that question, that question real quick, I think that it had an effect on her in the sense of it made her it it kind of put her into a position that she shouldn't have been in, being a caretaker for Theoden. I think that's
Mhm,
the way that Grima's deceitfulness worked against Eowyn. It wasn't necessarily directly towards her, but by proxy.
mhm.
Um, because of this leechcraft wielding, you know, evil bastard, she has to take care of doddering old man, or seemingly doddering. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
under some kind of, spell of some
Spell.
sort.
Mhm.
And so she has to care for him and care for him and care for him. And she does it because she loves him, but she deep down knows that this isn't what she was, put in Middle Earth to be, so to speak. So I think that's how it had an effect on her.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Oh gosh, this is just such good stuff. And of course, the most awesome thing happens in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. That's her climax, but
Right.
also just so many good things going on with the Rohirrim and everything. But we have King Theoden. He is down, and we're seeing this through the perspective of Mary, where it's like Mary is crawling on all fours because they're off the horse like a day's beast, and such a horror was on him that he was blind and sick. And I think some of what's being written here is probably something Tolkien knows from firsthand experience, like when you're in the middle of battle, that this
Right.
is the kind of stuff that happens.
Well,
And he's
before we get into the death of Theoden and Eowyn revealing herself, we need to talk about Durnhelm for a second.
Oh, sure.
Because I reading the passage, I kind of had this conflicting feeling. It was one of the very, very few times I didn't necessarily question Tolkien's writing, but I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, how did nobody figure out that Durnhelm wasn't actually wasn't who they said they were?
Mhm.
It always bothered me. It's like, there had to have been at least one or two Rohirrim looking over at Durnhelm like, hold on a second.
Is that a chick? And is that a
Is this
hobbit?
chick?
Like,
What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
good point. I think that's where we have to suspend our disbelief, and
Yeah, for
maybe they
sure,
were
for sure.
kinda
I think
hiding
I
them.
think Tolkien definitely writes it well enough to where you can suspend your disbelief and just be like, okay, she managed to, sneak in with the rest of the Rohirrim under an alias, and she kept the Hobbit hidden, and then they rode for the Pelennor Fields. I can totally believe that. It's just one of those things where I'm thinking about it in a more I don't want to say realistic, because obviously Tolkien pulled a ton of stuff from his real life experience, but I'm thinking just more as like if I was just a silent observer and I'm looking over, I'm just like, wait, because even the way he describes Durnhelm is like slender, less built than the other
Yeah.
writers. Like he's even described as she has a pretty, Durnhelm has a pretty, shall we say, feminine physique. What's going on
Yeah,
here? But
exactly. Or maybe they were
yeah,
just so focused on
they were
writing
so
and getting
focused.
into
Yeah,
battle, they just didn't
yeah.
notice.
Yeah,
Or
they're just like, we want to kill orcs. We don't care. Like Durnhelm, cool, whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Didn't it say that her
Um,
unit pointedly ignored the two as if they knew and chose to ignore?
um,
Oh, that might.
I'm not entirely sure. I don't recall that,
Well,
but that doesn't mean
yeah, I don't recall that either. But it doesn't. Yeah, like you say, it doesn't necessarily mean that's not the case. Hmm,
yeah, there's
I'm
so
kind of curious.
much
I'll have to look
there.
later.
Yeah, help us out. Maybe if you could give us an orientation of where that is, because as I was saying earlier, this is kind of it's like we know this stuff, but we don't always have it like memorized chapter and verse. Um, but in any case, that it is what it is, or
Right.
maybe they saw and it's like, well, whatever, because they got better things to do. Let me see. Okay, well, we're gonna go on to the great moment.
Yep. Yep. Hmm.
Um, so anyways, eh, Mary is there, Kingsman, and his heart cried with him, "You must stay by him. As a father, you shall not, you shall be to me," you said. But his will made no answer, and his body shook. He dared not open his eyes or look up. Then, out of the blackness in his mind, he thought he heard Durnhelm speaking. Dun dun dun.
Hmm.
And now the voice seemed strange, recalling some other voice that he had known. I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, I wasn't gonna say it. I was just going, yes, yeah, we're
Yeah.
dun dun dun. It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. And yeah, this portion I was able to cut and paste. Be gone, foul. Is it Dwimmer Lake? Lord of Carrion, leave the dead in peace. A cold voice answered, come not between the Nazgul and his prey, or he will not slay thee in thy turn. He will bear thee away to the houses of lamentation beyond all darkness, where thy flesh shall be devoured, and thy shriveled mind be left naked to the lidless eye. A sword rang as it was drawn. Do what you will, but I will hinder it if I may. Hinder me, thou fool. No living man may hinder me. Then Mary heard of all sounds in that hour the strangest. It seemed that Durnhelm laughed, and the clear voice was like the ring of steel. But no living man am I. You look upon a woman, Eowyn I am, Eowyn's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and kin. Be gone if you be not deathless. For living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him. The winged creature screamed at her, but the ring wraith made no answer and was silent, as if in sudden doubt. So let's talk about this. What's this no living man may hinder me?
So, how best to describe this? Give me 1 second. So, the no living man may hinder me. If I recall correctly, there was a.
Well, it was like no. It was like everyone knew it. It was like everyone knows Santa Claus. Everyone knows that no man can kill the Witch King.
Well, I think it's also pride on the Witch King's part too, because all manner of men, hobbit, whatever, fled, unless you were like a great being, like say a Gandalf or an Aragorn or something along those lines. Most fled before the Witch King. So I think there's a level of arrogance to the Witch King as well, where he's done this so many times, and now he has this woman who just doesn't give a damn. He's like, and that's why he's in town. He's like, oh wait a minute, what kind of crap have I got myself into here? Well, there's a prophecy also, isn't there, with the Witch King as well? If I recall correctly.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure where it was written. I think it was mentioned that it was just like almost like a passing thing, like that no man can kill him, like that was the thing about him. That everyone said no man can kill him.
It was some seer, I believe, that long before Eowyn was even alive or anything that said it. I'll have to look it up later. I'll be
everybody Google.
Everything I forget about, I'm just going to be posting on Twitter tonight.
Okay, good. So everyone, look at him.
Here's what we forgot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in many ways, it's like I told it, like reading the Bible, or maybe that's not even good enough. Maybe it's like kind of reading Thomas Aquinas. You're kind of like, dude, my brain just went into overload. I mean, there's just so much there. I mean, in each paragraph. So yeah. So in any case, that's what we have. And but here, Miss Martin Muses, we admit it. We admit when our brains go fried.
But before we carry on, I have to use the boys' room real quick, so I will be right back.
Oh, okay, because this is like the best part. Okay, we will
right. I don't want to miss out on it. Cool.
That's what happens. Yeah. Hey, you got it. When nature calls, nature calls. But yeah, thou fool. I just love this part. And never forget, let's have a moment of silence for Mary, because he does what everyone calls the assist. I always think of, like in soccer, everyone always thinks about who does the goal, but people don't always remember the assist. Now, they will talk about the assist, but for the most part, they know the guy that kicked in the goal. But it wouldn't have worked if there hadn't been the assist. And, Mary was not a man either. He was a hobbit. And speaking of which, the reason why Mary has his super duper little sword thing that he's able to get with the Witch King is because Tom Bombadil gave it to him, and we all know that Tom Bombadil kind of gives zero clucks. He's tossing the ring around like a toy and all that, but somehow he knew enough to give them this. So the hand of providence is really kind of working through this. We know that there is Eowyn. We know that there is God in Tolkien's world, but God does not directly intervene. But sometimes when we see things like providence, or to even go further, where you have the whole thing being saved, the whole reason why the ring was able to be destroyed was because nearly 100 years earlier, Bilbo had pity on Gollum. That kind of thing. So you do see the invisible hand of that here, that things do kind of fit into place, but it's not done in a contrived manner.
All right, I am back.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I was just I was giving Mary his due, and also talking about a little bit about I mentioned Tom Bombadil, that part of the reason why Mary has the sword that he has at this point is because Tom Bombadil gave him, and even though Tom Bombadil doesn't, care, we know, he's very whatever, he still had some foresight to also do this, and that sometimes we do see maybe a little bit of the hand of providence working throughout this world. We see dreams playing a role, for example, and the fact that kind of everything falls into place to fulfill that, a man will not kill the Witch King.
Right. Yeah, and it's really interesting to bring that up, because I was actually thinking about that. It kind of the way that Tolkien structured the kind of the will of Eru Ilúvatar works out in this exact kind of manner with the fall of the Witch King. In similar ways, like almost by chance, but there is a divine hand that's kind of guiding everything along. And absolutely, in Bombadil even talks about the history. If I recall correctly, he even talks a bit about the history of the blades, that they were forged during the Angmar Wars, if I recall. To be combated again, to be used in combat against foes like the Witch King. I don't know if he goes in I can't remember if he goes into that kind of specific. Architect Outcasts, Return of the King, Chapter 5, Paragraph 3, sentences 6 through 10.
Okay, so I'm getting there. The paragraph, Chapter 5, Paragraph 3, 1, 2. Okay, let me see. Oh, yes. So before we go to the great moment, we pause. So Mary is tired as he was. Mary could not sleep. They had written for 4 days, and he was starting to wonder why the hell he'd do this. He wondered, too, if the old king knew that he had been disobeyed and was angry. Perhaps not. Here we go. There seemed to be some understanding between Durnhelm and Elfhelm, the marshal who commanded the Ered in which they were riding. He and all his men ignored Mary and pretended not to hear if he spoke. He might have just been another bag that Durnhelm was carrying. Durnhelm was no comfort. He never spoke to anyone. Okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, that line where it says, there seemed to be some understanding between Durnhelm and Elfhelm. A don't ask, don't tell. Yeah, good catch. Thank you.
Yep, and foolish of me to not remember that Tolkien obviously would have accounted for that.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't. I mean, like I said, we can't memorize everything. We're talking about thousands and thousands of pages, and that's wow. There you go.
Right.
Well, everyone take a note and bookmark it in their book. Here. Good.
Which
good catch,
can we also say that it really doesn't work in the films?
Oh no. Well, in the film, she's just walking around with her helmet off.
With her helmet off. Eomer and Theoden are just riding by. They don't even notice her. Like, nobody says anything. It's like, and there's no elf helm. There's none of that. So it's like, it makes it really bizarre to kind of watch. It's like, really, nobody's noticing this.
Moment. It's like, well, because she was wearing glasses. We didn't do it.
Her hair was unkempt, guys. We couldn't see. It was in
Yeah,
fact Eowyn.
yeah, exactly. Though there is, well, we don't want to talk about the movie, but there is a moment in the movie where it does look like Theoden goes, "Hey, wait a second,
Right.
that's her, or is that her?" But yeah, wow, good. You see, this is why I love it. My chat, no, just trying to be helpful. No, that's exactly what I
Yeah, that's
want. Yeah, because that's
absolutely.
yeah, the chat is part of this discussion, and it, you know, like I said, it's can be very overwhelming. I mean, I don't know how many times I've read these freaking books, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface of all of this stuff. It's so deep. Okay, so we're going to continue with the moment. This is the
The moment.
moment. Very amazement for a moment conquered Mary's fear. Check this out. He opened his eyes, and the blackness was lifted from them. So, whatever she did, it was like it broke some sort of spell or something, or inspired him. There, some paces from him, sat the great beast, and all seemed dark about it, and above it loomed the Nazgul Lord like a shadow of despair. A little to the left, facing them, stood she whom he had called Durnhelm, but the helm of her secrecy had fallen from her, and her bright hair, released from its bonds, gleamed with pale gold upon her shoulders. Her eyes, gray as the sea, were hard and fell, and yet tears were on her cheek. A sword was in her hand, and she raised her shield against the horror of her enemy's eyes. Eowyn it was, and Durnhelm also. For into Mary's mind flashed the memory of the face that he saw at the riding from Dunharrow, the face of one that goes seeking death, having no hope. Pity filled his heart and great wonder, and suddenly the slow kindled courage of his race awoke. He clenched his hand. She should not die, so fair, so desperate. At least she should not die alone, unaided. The face of their enemy was not turned towards him, but still he hardly dared to move, dreading lest the deadly eye should fall on him. Slowly, slowly he began to crawl aside, but the black captain, in doubt and malice intent upon the woman before him, heeded him no more than a worm in the mud. It's like they were just working together. It's
Right.
just freaking awesome the way he gets that superhuman or hobbity strength. I just oh Suddenly the great beast beat its hideous wings, and the wind of them was foul. Again it leaped into the air, and then swiftly fell down upon Eowyn, shrieking, striking with beak and claw. Still she did not blench. Maiden of the Rohirrim, child of kings, slender but as a steel blade, fair yet terrible. A swift stroke she dealt, skilled and deadly. The outstretched neck she clove asunder, and the hewn head fell like a stone. Backward she sprang as a huge shape crushed to ruin, vast wings outspread, crumpled on the earth, and with its fall the shadow passed away. A light fell about her, and her hair shone in the sunrise. Holy crap!
Right. Right. Well, it's very interesting. The first thing that stuck out to me while you were reading, and I was reading along with you, um, is this is kind of a reoccurring motif in Tolkien's works, where he's this right here. Let me find it. Some paces from him sat the great beast, and all seemed dark about it, and above it loomed the Nazgul Lord like a shadow of despair. A little to the left, facing them, stood she whom he had called Durnhelm, but the helm of her secrecy had fallen from her, and her bright hair, released from its bonds, gleamed with pale and gold upon her shoulders. This immediately reminded me of the Fall of Fingolfin.
Mm.
When Morgoth comes from his subterranean lair, and Tolkien describes him as shield, sable, unblazoned, dark and powerful, this mighty dark lord. And then he goes and describe Fingolfin. Thank you. How his sword ringle glittered like ice, and he shone beneath Morgoth like a star. And like
Mm.
it's a very, very similar motif, and I love it. It's so good. And just the way Tolkien writes this, I mean, like, if you don't get adrenaline pumped from Eowyn slaying the beast there, like, there's something
There's something
wrong with
wrong.
you.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I say you need to, get out your Viagra or something because you need to get things pumping. I mean, it's just like it makes you want to go out and like I don't know, pick a fight in a parking
Yeah.
lot at the gas station. It's like I just want to kill something. I'm just
Yeah.
feeling so awesome.
It's one of those many, many moments in
Uh-huh.
Tolkien's works where it's like, put a sword in my hand right now. I am ready to
Exactly.
go. You know?
Exactly. Oh, damn. Hell yes. And yeah, I did answer the question in the chat, which is better, movie and book. Well, I mean, obviously the
A
book. I
book,
mean,
book,
oh my
without
gosh,
question. Yeah.
easily. Um, and then to continue, out of the wreck rose the Black Rider, tall and threatening, towering above her. With a cry of hatred that stung the very ears like venom, he let fall his mace. I mean, holy crap. Her shield was shivered in many pieces, and her arm was broken. She stumbled to her knees. He bent over her like a cloud, and his eyes glittered. He raised his mace to kill. But suddenly, he too stumbled forward with a cry of bitter pain, and his stroke went wide, driving into the ground. Mary's sword, and everybody cheers,
Mhm.
had stabbed him from behind, shearing through the black mantle and passing up beneath the hauberk. Had pierced a sinew behind his mighty knee. Eowyn, Eowyn, cried Mary. Then tottering, struggling up with her last strength, she drove her sword between crown and mantle as the great shoulders bowed before her. The sword broke, sparkling into many shards. The crown rolled away with a clang. Eowyn fell forward upon her fallen foe. But lo, the mantle and hauberk were empty. Shapeless they now lay on the ground, torn and tumbled. And a cry went up into the shuddering air and faded to a shrill wailing, passing with the wind, a voice bodiless and thin that died and was swallowed up and never heard again in that age of this world. And woo! This is where you seen that meme thing where people are watching a football game on the TV and people add things. Like if this was written up on that and everyone just
Oh,
starts
yeah.
goes
Starts
crazy like
cheering. Yeah, yeah.
up, it's like holy crap. So amazing. And again, the way Mary is written here, I mean, this is why, in so many different ways, after this, when they all settled down, she and Mary were like thick as thieves. I mean, forever,
Yeah.
band of brothers or, brother and sister, if whatever in this, because, oh, so, I mean, what more
Wasn't
is there to say?
was wasn't he I'm again, I might have to it's I know it's in the appendix, I'm pretty sure it is. But I'm pretty sure he was given a mound
Oh, when he was buried?
when he passed, yeah.
Oh, it's very possible. Oh gosh, I'm ashamed of myself that I don't know that, but I do know,
No,
they
no, I'm wrong. Merry and Pippin, I'm pretty sure were both buried next to Aragorn.
oh, yes, okay, I knew that Pippin was, yes,
Yeah,
but
I
same
think it was
idea.
Merry as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they all, like, would visit each other, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
named their kids after each other. There was an Eowyn I know, so friends forever, friends for life, and then, of course,
Oh,
it's just so
absolutely.
perfect because Pippin had the connection with Faramir, and so it's like, "Oh, it's so cute," they're all they're all just gonna be friendies after this, but I mean, the whole thing with the mace and that Eowyn, even though she's just shattered, I mean, broken and everything's gone, and with her last strength, when Mary cries her name, like it's like, go do it now, and boom,
Yep.
she just does it. Ugh, hi Snortopoopas, by the way. Yeah, I'm so excited here. Um, and I want to just end this kind of sequence with maybe this is a slight answer to our question about Eowyn screwing up. Mary, when he's talking to Theoden, he goes, I'm sorry, forgive me, Lord, if I broke your command and yet have done no more in your service than to weep at our parting. And the old king smiled, grieve not, it is forgiven, great heart will not be denied. So maybe at this point he's like, screw it,
Yeah.
it all wasn't meant to be, and maybe that's the same attitude that he would have had toward Eowyn as well.
Well, man, I know we're talking about Eowyn, but I mean, Theoden's last words to Mary are kind of heart wrenching. It's like, geez,
Yeah.
Louise.
No.
You know,
It says,
live now and
sorry.
live.
Yeah. When you sit in peace with your pipe, think of me, for never now shall I sit with you in Meduseld as I promised, or listen to your herb lore.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh shit. Excuse my French, but it's like, man.
No, it's all right. Yeah. Hey, I usually curse more, but I'm trying not to.
Right, right. Oh man. Oh boy.
Oof.
Oh, and I would send word to Eowyn. She would not have me leave her, and now I shall not see her again, dearer than daughter. And then he died.
Yeah. But before he could say so. And then, of
Yep.
course, when Eomer sees her, Eowyn, 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 how came you here? What madness or devilry is this? It says, what does it say? A fey mood took him, like almost like a supernatural thing. Death, 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 death,
Hmm.
take us all. And then he goes and spurs headlong back to the front of the line, blew a horn and cried aloud for the onset. Death, ride to ruin, and the world's ending. Yeah, that was Amer's line, everyone. And with that, the host began to move, but the Rohirrim saying no more death, they cried with one voice, loud and terrible, and gathering speed like a great tide. Their battle swept about their fallen king and passed roaring way southwards, yelling death, death, death. So in a way, that was also something. It's like, Eowyn, yeah, you kind of screwed up, but hey, you
True.
inspired people. They just started yelling death and just went badass.
I'm telling you right now, not to bring up the movies too much, but man, they missed out on a golden thing here. That
Oh,
the
hell
whole
yeah.
sequence with Eomer figuring out that Eowyn was on the battle, instead of just having him crying and holding her in his arm, having I forget the actor's name. The actor who played Eomer.
Oh,
Shoot.
great. Now it just went out of my head too.
He was in all the Thor movies. He's in The
Yeah.
Boys, even though I think The Boys is a terrible show. What is
That
his
good
name?
actor. He's a good
Yeah,
actor.
the
And he was
wife would
well
know.
cast.
She
Yeah.
she's in love with him. But no, having him do do this book accurate. Oh
Oh,
man. Oh, it would
that
have
would have
been
been so
so
awesome.
good.
And
Like,
screaming, death,
just
death.
him.
Thank you, Carl Urban. Thank you, Carl
Yeah,
Urban.
Carl Urban.
Yeah,
Yep, yep, yep,
everyone's
yep, yep.
going crazy. They're yelling this in the chat. It's Carl Urban. Yeah. Okay. We do have a super chat by RRTNZ New
What the
Zealand.
hell? I'm sorry, I
Wait,
just
what?
read it. I just read
Oh,
the
okay. I
super
haven't
chat.
read it yet. Okay. Well, it's a super chat, so I gotta read it.
Right.
As the Witch King cried, it's Nazgul time. Mary bawled, get away from her, you bitch, and used his phaser to disrupt Skeletor's shield, and Eowyn stabbed her lightsaber through Vader's face. I wept with joy. Holy crud.
How to piss off like 4 fan bases at once there.
Yeah, well done. Well done. And for that, sir, thank you so much for that super chat. I think you're a sir. Thank you so much. Best chat ever. Yeah, everyone's going, Carl Urban. I know.
Yeah, everybody's losing their mind. Carl
Several
Urban.
times
Yep.
I'm sure y'all are yelling at us. It's like, oh my gosh, people, it's this. Well, sometimes when you're in a live stream as well, you're doing so many things at once. Sometimes your brain goes crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Oh dear me. But okay,
So,
and go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so Eowyn doesn't show up until the Houses of Healing.
No. Not at all. She
Again.
goes and
Yeah.
she gets healed. She and my boyfriend, Faramir. But then we get to what I call the Eowyn splaining.
Mhm.
Because let's see. They talk about Aragorn says it was an evil doom that set her in his path, the Witch King. For she is a fair maiden, fairest lady of a house of queens, and yet I know how I should speak of her. When I first looked on her and perceived her unhappiness, it seemed that I saw a white flower standing straight and proud, shapely as a lily, and yet know that it was hard, as if wrought by elf-rites out of steel, or was it maybe a frost that had turned its saps to ice, and so it stood, bittersweet, still fair to see, but stricken. I'm like, dude, for someone that's just been in a battle, you sure have a way of
Yeah. Waxing poetically.
exactly. Still fair to see, but stricken, soon to fall and die. Her malady begins far back before this day, does it not, Amer? I marvel that you should ask me, my lord, he answered, for I hold you blameless in this matter, as in all else. Yet I knew not that Eowyn, my sister, was touched by any frost until she first looked on you. Care and dread she had and shared with me in the days of Wormtongue and the king's bewitchment, and she tended the king in growing fear, but that did not bring her to this pass. My friend, said Gandalf, I'm just waiting for Eowyn to like wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm right here."
You're right.
She had horses and deeds of arms and the free fields, but she, born in the body of a maid, had a spirit and courage at least the match of yours. Yet she was doomed to wait upon an old man whom she loved as a father, and watch him falling into a mean dishonored dotage, and her part seemed to her more ignoble than of the staff he leaned on. Think you that Wormtongue only had poison only for Theoden's ears? Dodard, what is the house of Errol but a thatched barn where brigands drink of the reek and their brats roll on the floor among their dogs? Have you not heard these words before? Saruman spoke them, the teacher of Wormtongue. Um, though I do not doubt that Wormtongue at home wrapped their meaning in terms more cunning. My lord, if your sister's love for you and her will still bent to her duty had not restrained her lips, you might have heard even such things as these escape them. But who knows what she spoke to the darkness alone in the bitter watches of the night when all her life seemed shrinking and the walls of her bower closing in about her, a hutch to tremble some wild thing in.
Mm.
So, well, thank you, Gandalf. I never knew you cared so much.
Right.
Like I said, it's the Eowyn splaining chat where all the dudes just sit around and talk about Eowyn, but I mean he's right, and this goes to what was mentioned earlier. It's like how much of that was Wormtongue? It's like, well, yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
How much of that was Wormtongue coupled, well, like he says, when Gandalf says, when all her life seems shrinking,
mhm,
excuse me.
yeah,
And it's going back to that inescapable fear that Eowyn had, where she probably is sitting alone at night thinking to herself like, geez, is this going to be done over with? Am I going to be not necessarily lamenting having to care for her uncle, but also having that drive to do something more?
mhm.
There's a lot of that there. um
Well, her calling. I think that that's interesting. That
yeah.
in a way, maybe Gandalf is saying she born the body maid had spirit and courage the match of yours, meaning that there's a concept of vocation, like where you're kind of called to something. I'm not talking necessarily about a job, but like you're suited towards something in your life.
Right.
And Gandalf is kind of saying, she had a calling and there was no way for her to fulfill it for several reasons, all the crap that was going along, and that maybe that what we saw explode, if you will, and what her great deed was, that was what she was destined to do because that was what her heart was leaning toward. But
Oh
maybe
yeah,
for
for
the
sure.
I don't know. It's food for thought.
Excuse me. Mm.
And then they continue though. Eomer was silent and looked on his sister as if pondering anew all the days of their past life together. So Eomer, no offense, how there's a little bit of the stereotype that dudes don't notice. Like, when women are always like, well, if you don't know, then I'm not going to tell you. You know what I mean? It's like that Eomer is like, I didn't know. Oh, gee, it's like, well, sometimes, yeah, you don't. And especially, when you've got other things to think about in your life, like Eomer did.
Right.
But Aragorn said, I saw also what you saw, Eomer. Few other griefs amid the ill chances of this world have more bitterness and shame for a man's heart than to behold the love of a lady so fair and brave that cannot be returned. So maybe that's also what's going on with Aragorn. I mean, he feels terrible. He's like, I know I can't give her what she wants, and it kind of he says it was very hurtful for him to see that.
Right.
Sorrow and pity have followed me ever since I left her desperate in Dunharrow to the paths of the dead, and no fear upon that way was so present as a fear for what might befall her. That's what you were saying. That
Yeah.
he was worried. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A little bit of foresight there, thinking, oh man, the worst is yet to come type of deal. Because
Yeah.
I think Aragorn knew in his heart of hearts, like, she's not going to stay in Meadowseld. Like, that's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. This woman is on her knees, wailing and begging to come with me.
Yeah.
And
She's desperate.
To use a modern phrase, making a scene.
Yeah.
She's she isn't going to sit there. That's just not going to happen. And I fear for her because of that.
Exactly. Yeah. But then we get some deep insight, and similar to what my man's going to say soon. And yet, Eomer, I say to you that she loves you more truly than me. For you, she loves and knows. But in me, she loves only a shadow and a thought, a hope of glory and great deeds in lands far beyond the fields of Rohan.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically is saying what I was saying all along. She didn't know this guy.
Right.
She didn't know him from Adam. And he's like, she loves you more than me because she actually knows you. And, that to me, it was a shadow and a thought. In other words, that she was loving what she saw in Aragorn. She saw that maybe as her ticket out of her problem, or her way to get the glory that she felt that she wanted. It's like, she doesn't love me.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, he's worried about whether or not when she awakens, like, will she be in despair unless other healing comes, which I cannot bring. And we're like, ha ha, we know what's going to happen. Alas, for her deeds have set her among the queens of great renown. Whew. Yeah. But yeah, it's like, I just love it. All these guys just sitting around like it's Dr. Phil. It's like, let's all analyze Eowyn today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, to be fair to the gentleman in the room,
Yeah.
she was currently unconscious at this point, because right after that he says, Eowyn's daughter, awake, for your enemy has passed away.
Yeah. That's true. They were still asleep, but like I said, my thing was like, she was gonna say, I can hear you.
I just imagined funny little dialogue. All right, boys, now that we're done talking about her, I'm gonna wake her up. Okay.
Like, anyone else have any want to analyze Eowyn? Let's play that game.
Let's bring in Yorath while we're at it. Let's bring it the maidens here who look over all the junipers and whatnot. Let's bring them in and get their opinions on this fair maiden.
Yeah, it's like, let us know in the comments, everyone. What do you think of Eowyn? But I still love it because it that's Tolkien's way of telling us what he means about Eowyn. What was going on.
Right.
And so, in any case, that's that. But before we go on to the greatest chapter ever written in humanity, there might be slightly bit of hyperbole there. Do you have anything else to say?
No. I think we covered it pretty good. What I wanted to do, I meant to do it earlier. If you give me like 2 seconds, there's a quote from, because I was thinking while I took to take care of nature, I was thinking about because there's a quote from Haleth that I can't remember it, but I think it might actually have some importance when it comes to the comparison. Let me grab the Silmarillion real quick.
Sure. Okay.
It's just on my bookshelf right over here.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yes. So you see, that's what happens when you go to the bathroom. That's where all the philosophizing happens. But yeah, let's say hello to Dad Man Walking. Thank you for being here. He gave me an American football. Haha, thank you. Yeah, I like soccer, real football, where you use your foot. But that's okay. I can appreciate the skill and all that. And I have been following the kind of scandal a bit, maybe with the Super Bowl. I don't know. Oh, did your stream drop? Oh, I don't know. Okay, apparently he's going to be doing a stream later, but I just can't love this stuff more than I can. But and I know the rules of the stream war. We're not going to be talking about Eowyn in the movie, of course, Eowyn in the books. But one thing that really strikes me when you read this is how much the movies actually shortchanged Eomer and Eomer's role in a lot of this, because he's far more active. Like he was at Helm's Deep, for example, and he was part of these dialogues. So, moment of silence for Eomer. Maybe that'll be another string Eomer in the books, because we need to give this man some justice. So, yeah, and oh no, oh yeah, ended early because to get rest coffee. Yeah, everyone's getting sick. I was a little bit under the weather a day or so ago, and I was able to rest it off my throat and all that. Okay, so what do you have for us, High King?
So after the battle takes place, it's actually it's not really contrasting. It's very much a parallel. It says, then Caranther looked kindly upon men and did Haleth great honor, and he offered her recompense for her father and brother. And seeing overlate what valor there was in the Edain, he said to her, if you will remove and dwell further north, there you shall have the friendship and protection of the Eldar in free lands of your own. Which is a hell of a deal, considering, especially how the Noldor, mainly, I don't want to say all of them, obviously Finrod Felagund was friend of men, but a lot of Noldor felt towards men. They didn't really see a lot of value in men. And it says, but Haleth was proud and unwilling to be guided or ruled. Therefore she thanked Caranther, but answered, my mind is now set, Lord, to leave the shadow of the mountains and go west, whither others of our kin have gone. So she really did take kind of the opposite route of Eowyn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of reiterating what I've already said here, but just that her being proud and unwilling to be guided or ruled, there's a lot of you can connect the dots between her and Eowyn in that regard very, very well.
Yeah.
But it's again, the circumstances are a little bit different, but there are definitely parallels there, and differences in outcome as well based on their decisions. No, I just wanted to bring that up because it's been bugging me, and I meant to have that ready, and I didn't. So
yeah, no worries. Yeah. Well, and thank you for bringing that up, because that's an aspect of it I haven't looked at. Like I said, there's always different angles. Yeah, when you were getting that, I talked a little bit about Eomer at Helm's Deep in the book. I need to reread the book. Was it Erkenbrand that Gandalf gets to relieve them? Yeah, because in the movie they had Eomer.
As I recall, Erkenbrand was at the Fords of Isen.
Yeah, so I don't think so. Yeah, I'd need to Google that. Everyone Google. Yeah, sorry everyone's sick. This is ridiculous. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point. And maybe make a video or someone that would be a very good, interesting aspect of this, and makes complete sense because he's like poetry. It rhymes. So in any case, we do not hear from Eowyn until the Steward and the King, where it's kind of like a backwards chapter, because we go to the end and yay, Frodo and them do all that. They go fight. Aragorn and them go, and then we get the Steward and the King, where it opens back several chapters. So like this chapter technically takes place during like all of this. If this were a TV show, they would go, meanwhile. And then this is what Eowyn and Faramir are doing. Hello. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Snorter Poopits has to go. Thank you for being here, and it's good to see Eowyn in proper. Yeah. So, Eowyn wakes up, and let's see. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Their lord was dead and burned. Yeah, Denethor's dead. The king of Rohan is dead, and the new king's coming. And then off they go. And then when the captains were but 2 days gone, the lady Eowyn bade the women who tended her to bring her raiment so she would not be gainsaid, but rose. And when they had clothed her and set her arm in a sling, she went to the house warden of the house of the healing. Sir, I am in great unrest, and I cannot lie longer in sloth. Lady, he answered, you are not yet healed. So once we go again, she's wanting to do stuff, and they're like, very rightly, you're not yet healed. It's like, girl, you got a broken arm.
Right.
You were not healed, and I was commanded to tend you with a special care. And I'm sure that, that's probably Aemir was like, look after my sister or you die. You should not have risen from your bed for 7 days yet, or so I was bidden. I beg you to go back. I am healed, she said. Healed at least in body, save my left arm only. It's like, yeah, girl. All right. But I shall sicken anew if there is not that I can do. She's a woman that needs to do things, at least at this point. Are there no tidings of war? The women can tell me nothing. There are no tidings, said the warden. Said the lords have ridden to Morgul Vale, and men say that the new captain out of the north, blah, 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 blah. He tells her some stuff. And then he says, but for long years, we healers have only sought to patch the rent of the men of sword. So this is a little different perspective. It's like they're talking about, hey, this is what happens after people all fight. Though we should still have enough to do without him, the world is full enough of hurts and mischances without wars to multiply them. It's like, we know probably from Tolkien's experience, some of that stuff. It needs but one foe to breed a war, not two, Master Warden, answered Eowyn, and those who have not swords can still die upon them. Would you have the folk of Gondor gather you herbs only when the Dark Lord gathers armies? And it is not always good to be healed in body, nor is it always evil to die in battle, even in bitter pain. Were I permitted in this dark hour, I would choose the latter. And so she's wishing she had died in the battle. And of course, if this were nowadays, she would be put on like a suicide watch or something and be like, okay.
Right.
And then the hashtag Eowyn didn't kill herself.
We're putting this woman in a straitjacket, guys. Like,
yeah,
we gotta,
we need an intervention here. Yeah. Says the warden looked at her. Tall she stood there, her eyes bright in her white face, and her right hand clenched as she turned and gazed out of his window that opened to the east. He sighed and shook his head. And then she turned to him. Is there no deed to do? She said. Who commands this city? So she feels like she needs to do something. And I can relate to that, especially when hey, the climax is coming, and I'm just sitting here healing. And she didn't have Netflix to watch. And he goes, I do not rightly know. Such things are not in my care. There is a marshal over the riders of Rohan, and the Lord Hurin, I'm told, commands the city of Gondor. But the Lord Faramir is by right the steward of the city. And she goes, where can I find him? In this house, lady. He was sorely hurt, and he is now yet set again on the way of health. But I do not know him. Will you not bring me to him? Then you will know. So that's a little bit of dialogue that I don't always look at too often. So it's kind of fascinating to reread that.
Right.
Get the warden's point of view of all of this. And
in layman's terms, he's pretty much telling her, like, listen, lady, I'm just here doing my job. It's my job to make sure that you heal properly, and everybody is safe and good in these houses, and you're just being a giant pain in the butt about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's her reaction to him is quintessential. Can I speak with the manager, please?
It's almost really a Karen moment.
It is a Karen moment. Who's in charge here? Let me talk to the person in charge, please.
Yeah. Well, and in many ways, this is another moment where I kind of like, well, obviously Faramir, but the idea is like, listen, Eowyn, you're not the only one who it sucks to be you, because Faramir is a dude. I mean, you want to talk about not that it's okay for a woman to stay behind, but he's a man and he's being
Yeah.
forced to stay behind.
Mhm.
And he's sick and needs to heal. I mean, he's sitting there being lazy. It's not just because she's a woman. And but our boy, he feels new life run in his new felt life run new in his vein, but his heart was heavy, and he looked out over the walls eastward. So they're showing us, like, yeah, that he's worried too. And then he sees the lady Eowyn of Rohan, and he was moved with pity, for he saw that she was hurt, and his clear sight perceived her sorrow and unrest. At this point, all the fangirls start to go, "Oh my gosh!" Because we know he's not engaged to anybody.
Yep.
Um, he's free. And he's seeing the same thing that Aragorn says, but we'll see that how he's different too, because he's perfect for her. "My lord," said the warden, "here is the lady Eowyn of Rohan. She rode with the king and was sorely hurt and dwells now in my keeping, but she is not content." So yeah, you're right. He's kind of like, this chick is not convinced, and she wished to speak to the steward of the city. And then Eowyn goes, "Do not misunderstand him, nor it is not, Lord, it is not like of care that grieved me. No houses could be fairer." So maybe she's saying, hey, sorry, I'm not trying to be a bitch. "For those who
Right.
desire to be healed. But I cannot lie in sloth, idle cage." You see, once again, she's feeling like she's in a cage. "And I
Mhm.
looked for death in battle, but I have not died, and the battle still goes on." It's like, wow, what an introduction. um, at a sign from Faramir, the warden bowed and departed. "What would you have me do, lady?" I love him. I love him so much. Faramir said, "I am also a prisoner of the healers." He looked at her, and being a man whom pity deeply stirred, it seemed to him that her loveliness amid her grief would pierce his heart. Oh, and she looked at him and saw the grave tenderness in his eyes, and yet knew, for she was bred among men of war, that here was one whom no rider of the mark would outmatch in battle. "What do you wish?" he said, "if it lies in my power? I would have you command this warden and bid him let me go." And though her words were proud, her heart faltered. I'm skipping a few sentences here and
Yeah.
there. For the first time, she doubted herself. So I think we've all been there where you're like, yeah, yeah, this is how I feel. And then you say it out loud to someone, and then you're like, oh, maybe that sounds kind of dumb.
Right. It's like immediate hindsight, like, "Oh, what did I just say? That was,
Yeah. She guessed that this tall man, both stern and gentle, might think her merely wayward like a child. Yeah, so she's getting it. It's like, hey, I'm coming off like a child that has now the firmness of mind to go on with a dull task to the end. And of course, he says, "I myself am in the warden's keeping, nor have I yet to take up my authority in the city. But had I done so, I would still listen to his counsel and should not cross his will in matters of his craft unless of some great need." So he's kind of warden defending here. It's like, hey, he's the doctor. He's the one that's trying to heal me. And it's like, I'm going to listen to the doctor. "But I do not desire healing," she said. This is where the intervention would come in the 21st century. "I wish
Right.
to ride to war like yeah, I wish to ride to war like my brother Aemor, or better, like Theoden the king, for he died in his both honor and peace." And it's like, girl. Yeah. And then, of course, he tells her it's too late, but death may still come to us all. Like, hey, girl, you might get
You might get your
you
wish.
might get your wish. and And he goes, "You will be better prepared to face it in your own manner if while there is still time you do as a healer commanded." It's like, yeah, girl, maybe like heal, like take advantage of this time. "And you and I must endure hours of waiting." And she did not answer, but he looked at her, and it seemed to him that something of her softened, as though a bitter frost were yielding at the faint presage of spring. A tear sprang in her eye and fell down her cheek like a glistening raindrop. Her proud head drooped a little, then quietly, more as if speaking to herself than him, "But the healers would have me lie abed, and 7 days yet, and my window does not look, eastward." I'm having caterference here. I don't know if you heard that.
Oh,
And
I've
it
been
was
having that all night too. It's all good. I
yeah,
got 2 cats out here
he's
right now. I have 3
he's
cats
knocking over
total,
things.
and
Yeah.
I have my
It would
one
eat
cat who's just he's sitting on top of our recliner just staring at the wall for some reason. I don't know what he's Yeah, I'm
yeah,
talking about you.
mine's getting in the way of the book. "It would ease my care if you would speak to me or walk a while." Oh, wait. Uh I said, oh, he goes, oh, her voice was now that of a maiden, young and sad. So we're starting to get to the center of, what's really ailing her. And maybe because is speaking this out loud, like she did a little bit with Aragorn, but, she's kind of bearing her soul a little bit. And I think because Faramir is so perfect, he's kind of understanding her and mirroring her. And she's just kind of figuring out, I just can't. I just can't say this in front of this guy. He's just
Right.
kind of like, I'm feeling silly, maybe.
Right.
And
I
then,
feel like Faramir also, just as like a character, seems a lot more approachable than
mhm,
Aragorn in a way.
yeah,
That might have a part of it too. Obviously Aragorn is a caring good guy, but Faramir's like next level. he's
yes.
he's on, he's on the
Well,
catalog,
yeah, that's why I love Faramir so much.
right?
Faramir, everyone argues, but yeah, one cat to rule the stream. Yes, two cats. Yeah, but also, well, and that's one of his skills too.
Right.
And Aragorn was destined, if you will, to be the king to a certain degree. But Faramir, he wasn't even supposed to be. He was the second son. That was his kind of deal,
Yeah.
and he's stepping into a world that he didn't expect to be in. But when all boils down to, she's starting to cry, and she goes, "But my window does not look east." And Faramir smiled, though his heart was filled with pity. "Your window does not look eastward," he said. "That can be amended. In this, I will command the warden, and we shall look east," etc. So, when you have problems, sometimes just something as simple as like, okay, well, we'll get you a window that looks east, and what else? Have a cup of tea, get a massage. I don't know, but that they always say that when you're facing something that's so overwhelming, just choose something that's in your control. And it seems like Faramir understands this. And so he's like, okay, we'll get you a window. And while we're waiting, if you would speak to me and walk a while with me. Then she
Hmm.
raised her head and looked at him in the eyes again, and a color came in her pale face. So maybe she's figuring out, it's like, "Wait, is he hitting on me?
Yeah.
How should I ease your care, my lord?" She said, "I do not desire the speech of living men. Would you have my plain answer?" He said, "I would." And you see, that's where I think they're starting to mesh,
Right.
because she doesn't need anyone to dance around it and all that. She just wants it straight. And Faramir's just the kind of guy that's like, "Okay, I'll just tell you. You know
Yeah.
what? Then Eowyn of Rohan, I say to you that you are beautiful." Men take notes. The valleys and hills there are flowers fair and bright, and maidens fair still, but neither flower nor lady have I seen till now in Gondor so lovely and so sorrowful. It may be that only a few days are left ere darkness falls, blah, blah, blah. And if the sun, but it would ease my heart if while the sun yet shines, I could see you still. For you and I, see, check this out. You and I have both passed under the wings of the shadow, and the same hand drew us back. So he's saying what he's feeling is like, hey, maybe because we're all going to die. I don't know. But he just lays it out. And then he points out what they have in common. You and I
Right.
have the same experience, um, in more ways than one, as we learn. But she goes, "Alas, not me, Lord. Shadows lie on me still. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle. But I thank you for this at least, that I need not keep to my chamber. I will walk abroad for the grace of the steward of the city." So that's how it starts. Um,
Yeah. And she's a little bit in denial. Um
yeah.
a
Well,
shadow lies in me still, look not to me for healing, but she seems to forget. This is it's almost kind of like she's in it's in a way a callback to her caring for Theoden. It's like, no, you are actually a very caring, nurturing individual. You just don't want to admit it.
mhm.
That's the way it comes across to me.
Yeah, and that obviously she had, I don't want to say a chip on her shoulder, but definitely she fears a cage. And I think
Yeah,
everyone
true.
can can relate to that, and little by little, he's showing her some freedom. It's like, well, yeah, walk abroad. You don't have to stay in your chamber, and walk with me, and we will heal. And it says though that they go and they walk and they talk and they sit on the grass, and if this was a cheesy 80s movie, it would show a montage and there'd be music and stuff. And um, and then she's, of course, one of the most beautiful parts is Faramir sent had sent for a robe that she is wearing. It is a blue mantle, the color of summer night, and set with silver stars, and it belonged to his mother. And
Mm.
she looked fair and queenly indeed as she stood there at his side. So she's starting to kind of transform into a lady of Gondor here. Like before, we've seen her clothed in other ways. I feel like her clothing says a lot about what's going on with her. And his mother also was very sad. It says that she died untimely and was a brief memory. And he said and he felt like it was perfect for the beauty and sadness of Eowyn. But now she shivered beneath the starry mantle. What do you look for, Eowyn? Does not the black gate lie yonder, she says, and now must he not now come thither? It is 7 days since he rode away. And then my boyfriend says, 7 days, but blah, blah, blah. This has been such great joy and pain because I don't want the world to end. Eowyn, I would not have this world end now or lose so soon what I have found. So he's laying it out. He's showing his
Yeah.
card. Yeah,
Yep.
I love it.
He's laying
But
it
she's
on
not ready.
thick. So he's like, listen, I think you're the most lovely thing that I've ever seen. Okay.
Y- We got a lot in common.
Yeah, we have a
And
lot in
if
common.
if he were
Oh,
a
go
different
ahead.
man, he would be saying, "We don't know if we're gonna survive."
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
Right.
this was the last night of the world, that's where the joke about men that seduce.
Right.
That would
Right.
be a seducing moment. But maybe it's because that's why he's so blatantly honest with her, because he's like, "Hey, the world's gonna end. What do I have to lose?"
Right.
Um, but she's not ready, and I think that Faramir unsettles her because while with Aragorn, like maybe in a way Aragorn was a little safer because she could love him from afar. You know what I mean? It's always easier to enjoy what is unattainable, but with Faramir, he's just like, hey, he's getting under her skin. He's getting her. That this is the first time that she's met a man that she gets to know. And just previously, when Aragorn was Eowyn-splaining with Gandalf and Aemir,
Mhm.
he was saying she doesn't know me. But what is Tolkien telling us here? They're getting to know each other. They spend all day talking and walking and all that. So it's not just a dream and a shadow that she's finding in him.
Right. It's not an infatuation, and there was a lot of things that Aragorn, probably for Eowyn's sake, obviously, not wanting to hurt her or anything like that, intentionally kept from her. Whether it be not just the details of why he was going to take the paths of the dead, but also knowledge about Arwen, excuse me.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things he intentionally kind of kept hush hush, because he didn't want to hurt the poor girl, but at the same time he couldn't really divulge any of that information either.
No.
Eowyn appreciates just being spoken plainly to. She just wants an honest, direct answer, and that's what she gets from Faramir as opposed to Aragorn.
Mhm.
um
Good point.
in some aspects, obviously Aragorn wasn't lying to her or anything like that, but there were things that he did keep out of her knowledge, which oh, by the way, irks me about the Jackson films, because if you recall, in the Two Towers movie, he tells her about Arwen.
Mhm.
And then in Return of the King, she just decides to hit on him anyway.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
little
like,
bit.
oh,
She comes off a little, yeah.
yeah,
But then again, he does say that because they had that stupid story. He says, "Oh, she's gone away." So maybe
Yep,
she's thinking,
yeah.
"Okay, it doesn't matter. The girl's gone."
The girl's gone.
It's just
I can get, yeah, nah, that
it just hurts.
it hurts,
What
does
they
it?
do is so ridiculous with that. That's the
Yeah.
weakest part of those movies. But our girl, she's not ready. Lose what you have found, Lord, she answered, but she looked at him gravely, and her eyes were kind. I know not what in these days you have found that you could lose. So I don't know, is she playing dumb there? But it says her eyes were kind. So at this moment, is she just kind of saying, "Hey, I'm not feeling what you're feeling"?
Or is she
Uh,
playing dumb?
mm, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, he's talking about her. Yeah, good point.
Because right after she says, "But come, my friend, let us not speak of it, let us not speak at all. I stand upon some dreadful brink, and it is utterly dark in the abyss before my feet. But whether there is any light behind me, I cannot tell, for I cannot return yet. Or for I cannot turn yet, excuse me. I wait for some stroke of doom."
Ooh,
So
yeah. So she's. eh, I see what you're saying. Wait,
yeah,
that she's like, I can't yet.
yeah, yeah. I have to wait. So let's wait this out and
Yeah, let's wait and
and
see if we're gonna die or not.
right.
Yeah. And then my boyfriend goes, "Yes, we wait for the stroke of doom," said Faramir. And they said no more, and it seemed to them as they stood upon the wall that the wind died, and of course all the stuff that's going on, because this is the moment that the ring is about to be destroyed. All
Mhm.
time stilled. Um, see, the very beating of their hearts was stilled, rather. Time halted, and as they stood so, their hands met and clasped, so they did not know it. So that's a huge moment where they clasp hands here. So you see that they're facing this together. And they waited for what they knew not, and then, of course, the happy oh, no, this is before the happy. "Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
well done for Faramir." He goes, "It reminds me of Numenor." It's like, "Whoa, that's reassuring." It's like, "Hey, this reminds me of when that tidal wave came and hit everyone in
Did
Thailand or something, you
Hey,
know?"
Eowyn, did you know when the tidal wave hit Numenor, there was a fair maiden clinging to the rocks before the sea washed her away?
Yeah, it's like, "Hey, this is like what everyone drowned
You
in."
know I thought for a moment with my mom's robes on that you kinda did look like one of the queens of old, you know?
Yeah. It's like, "Well done." And she goes, "Of Numenor," said Eowyn. "Yes, the land of Westerness that foundered in the great dark wave climbing over the green lands and above the hills and coming on darkness unescapable. I often dream of it."
Well,
And
aren't you just the bearer of good news, Farmy?
I know for some reason, reading it aloud, speaking of saying things aloud, it does come off as ridiculous. Like, dude, you were so reassuring. And then she's like, "Then you think darkness is coming? Darkness unescapable?" And suddenly she drew close to him. And I would too. Well, for several reasons. But yeah, "No," said Faramir, looking into her face. "It was but a picture in my mind." I was like, "Then don't say it, you dummy." I
Well,
do not know what.
the only reason he said it was to get her to get terrified and draw close to her or to him. That's he knew what he was doing.
Oh, well, yeah, never mind. The reason of my waking mind tells me that great evil has befalling it. We stand at the end of days. Like I said, if he was a different man, he's like, we may not ever have a chance."
Right.
um, but my heart says nay, and all my limbs are light, and a hope and joy are come to me that no reason can deny. "Eowyn, Eowyn, right, White Lady of Rohan, in this hour I do not believe that any darkness will endure." And he stooped and kissed her brow. So maybe that is a little bit of he's bubbling this stuff out because he thinks the world's about to end. So woo, here we go.
Right.
Um, so he only kissed her brow. So at least he, didn't take that liberty. But
Right.
then of course the shadow departs, and then there's all the singing and all the people sang in all the ways of the city.
Sing
Um,
now, ye people of the Tower of Honor.
yeah. but and then everyone's at Cormoran, but Eowyn does not go. And by the way, good night, Deadman Walking. Thank you. And Faramir wondered at this, but he saw her seldom, being busy with many manners, and she still dwelt alone in the garden. So now she's alone again and grew pale again. And the warden was troubled, and he spoke to my boyfriend, Faramir, and he goes and seeks her out because she's pale and going, fading again. Eowyn, why do you tarry here, and do not go to the rejoicing in Cormoran beyond Caer Andros, where your brother awaits you? And she answered, do you not know? He answered, two reasons there may be, but which is true I do not know. And she's like, I do not wish to play at riddles. Speak plainer. And he goes, then if you will have it so, lady, you do not go because only your brother called for you, and to look on the Lord Aragorn, Elendil's heir, and his triumph would now bring you no joy. Or because I do not go, and you desire still to be near me. And maybe for both these reasons, and yet you yourself cannot choose between them. So I think what he's saying is she still has a little bit of that shadow and thought, all that stuff for Aragorn, but she's starting to realize, hey, I cannot choose between them.
Right.
Because, she is not ready to let go of her fantasy, maybe. I think that's what he's getting at. And then he just lays it out. Eowyn, do you not love me, or will you not? I wish to be loved by another, she answered, but I desire no man's pity. And then Eowyn explains a little bit here. That I know, he said, you desired to have the love of the Lord Aragorn, because he was high and puissant, and you wished to have renown and glory, and be lifted far above the mean things that crawl on the earth. And here we go. And as a great captain made to a young soldier, he seemed to you admirable, for so he is a lord among men. But when he gave you only understanding and pity, then you desired to have nothing unless a brave death and battle. Look at me, Eowyn. And this is what kind of has been saying all along, that she didn't have love for him, but maybe there was something in her that she was caged so much that Aragorn just sparked something in her that she's having difficulty letting go of, because maybe there's some security in not having a dream is sometimes easier than a rejection, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
so fair. Yeah, and he goes, look at me. And she looked at Faramir long and steadily, and Faramir said, do not scorn the pity that is a gift of a gentle heart, Eowyn, but I do not offer you my pity, for you are a lady high and valiant, and have yourself won renown that shall not be forgotten. So she got what she wanted. She got glory, and she's going to be remembered forever. And you are a lady beautiful, I deem, beyond even the words of the elven tongue to tell, and I love you. I once pitied your sorrow, but now were you the sorrowless, without fear or any lack, and the blissful queen of Gondor, still I would love you. Eowyn, do you not love me? And here we go. Then the heart of Eowyn changed, or else at last she understood it. See, that's a key line there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did she change, or did she understand it? Because all along she was clinging to this fantasy, and now she understood her heart. And suddenly her winter passed, and the sun shone on her. And she goes, I stand in Minas Ithil, the tower of the sun, she said, and behold, the shadow has departed. So with self-understanding, the shadow leaves. I will be a shield maiden no longer. Maybe she's realizing, hey, I wasn't supposed to be that. I will be a shield maiden no longer, nor vie with the great riders, nor take joy only in the songs of slaying. So maybe she's talking about her fantasy. Like, I had this fantasy. I was always thinking of songs and all this. I will be a healer and love all things that grow and are not barren. And again, she looked at Faramir. No longer do I desire to be a queen. So,
what's interesting too is that, when she was caretaking for Theoden, she didn't really see any. Obviously, she saw Gandalf kind of bring Theoden back from the abyss, so to speak, but she didn't really see any actual caring or healing, until she got to the houses of healing. it was
True.
all very it was all very abrupt when they were in Meadowseld, and when she's had time to actually observe this, and along with Faramir kind of not coaxing her in that direction, but kind of showing her like a different path, so to speak. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, where it says right there that um oh, where is it? I got to find my place in the book. I lost it. The heart of Eowyn changed, or at least she understood it.
Mhm.
It could be her realizing like, oh, this might be a better, you know, this might be actually what I was kind of wanting all along, and I just didn't really, you know, understand it,
Mhm.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Um,
And not to underestimate the discussion she had with the warden at the beginning of the chapter, who's like,
oh
"Hey,
yeah,
healing's like a good thing. It's like
yeah.
what I do is I stay back, yeah, and maybe that's what people need to do when there's war. There's got to be someone out there to
Again,
heal."
peak character arc writing. Like it's so
Mhm.
good. You know,
Damn right.
seeing her go from being a, you know, downtrodden's the wrong word, but a kind of hopeless, helpless woman who's just caretaking her uncle to being drawn to great deeds by her infatuation with this great lord that is Aragorn, to riding into battle and seeing all the slaying and death and everything, and then kind of realizing after the fact, like, nah, healing and goodness and tenderness are actually things that I should be more invested in. That's it's glorious writing on the part of Tolkien as
Yeah.
far as a character arc. I've brought this up a billion times already, but it just
Yeah.
really is. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why everyone, every writer, like, not worships him. And when you read his letters, he was very uncomfortable with all this stuff. I mean,
Right.
there was one of his new letters that was published that was where they wanted to have a Tolkien award, and he was like, "Why do you want to have a Tolkien award?" It's like he just wasn't comfortable with that. It's like, what's going on? You know,
Right.
um,
There,
it's
there, there's one of his letters though that genuinely made me kind of in hindsight made me very depressed. I think it's letter, is it 192? I can't remember which letter it is, but it made me depressed thinking about Treebeard when he's talking about the Entwives.
uh-huh.
And then you find out what happened to the Entwives. It's like, oh
Oh yeah.
man.
Oh
Like,
yeah, it's terrible. Yeah,
it's terrible.
it's
It's like, Treebeard, there's
well,
no hope, man. I'm sorry. They're
yeah.
all gone.
Well, I can certainly relate to what when he talks about history. It's like history is one long defeat. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but but since we're happy right now, it also occurred to me, did the girl even travel? I mean, how many
Yeah, that's a
men did
fair
she
point.
actually meet?
Well,
This is the first time she's had people to open her eyes. Like she meets the warden. She's like, "Hey, I'm here in Gondor, and there's all this different people, and hey, there's this new guy who's telling me a different perspective."
probably emissaries, but I mean, going back to her talking about being locked in a cage, she probably was, for the vast majority of her life, just in Meadowseld.
Yeah.
Seldom going out. She probably went out and rode a little bit here and there, and maybe that brought her some, some joy and comfort for a little whiles. But overall, yeah, she was just trapped in the Golden Hall.
Yeah. And like I said, getting different perspectives and different meetings and seeing, a different way.
Right.
And of course, well, we've already talked about, how perfect Faramir is and all that. But and he says that great line. That is when she says, "I don't want to be a queen." He goes, "That is well, for I am not a king." So then they kind of banter. It's great. "Yet I will wed with the White Lady of Rohan, if it be her will, and if she will, let us cross the river, and in happier days let us dwell in fair Ithilien, and there make a garden. All things will grow with joy there, if the White Lady comes." So he wants to go for healing too, because he's seen war for most of his life. He
Right.
wants to go and grow a garden, and the two of them can heal. And then she teases, "Then must I leave my own people, man of Gondor?" She's teasing him. It's fun to see her like she's
Right.
happy. "And would you have your proud folk save you? There goes a lord who tamed a wild shield maiden of the north. Was there no woman of the race of Numenor to choose?" And he goes, I would. And he took her in his arms and kissed her under the sunlit sky. So, you know, they were both very lighthearted, but, of course, because I'm trying to think, hey, this is a chick that was so, cold and sad. And listen, now she's smooching the steward of Gondor where everyone can look and see her. It's a very happy moment. It's like a
Right.
celebration. Yeah.
And I like how she's being self-deprecating, but in a joking manner.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, of
Yes.
all the maidens of Gondor, all the maidens of Numenor, you don't want to get with them. You want to get with me. Really? Like,
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and of course, that could also be something that tells you a little bit, probably the gossips might say some stuff and like, oh, why didn't you choose one of us?
Yeah, and Faramir's just like, I don't care. I'm literally the steward of Gondor. Why would I care?
Exactly. Screw them all. And then Faramir goes, here is the Lady Eowyn of Rohan, and now she is healed. Yay! And everyone claps. And she goes, now that I have leave to depart, I would remain, for this house has become to me of all dwellings the most blessed. So that's like
So good.
where she changed in a good way, or as we say, understood it. And that's pretty much all we hear of her. What is it that she says? Oh, that we do know that she is going to go back to Rohan with Aemir and heal them because, they've had all this stuff. And yeah, she goes, now I must go back to my own lands and look upon it once again and help my brother in his labor. Yeah, like to rebuild that area from everything that has happened. But when the one whom I loved as a father is laid to rest, I will return. So, that she's gonna leave and she's gonna become a woman of Gondor. But she's gonna tie up some loose ends and help her brother. And we do see that after King Theoden's funeral, that they let's see, I think this is in many partings, that their engagement is announced, and Eomer points out that this marriage is not only just kind of cool, but she see, what does it say about they would be troth-plighted before you are? Thus, said Aemor, is the friendship of the Mark and of Gondor bound with a new bond, and no more do I rejoice. So this is also kind of a good political marriage.
Yeah, true.
If you think about it. And maybe in a different time, it might have even been an arranged marriage. It's like,
right.
Hey, yeah. And then I don't want to say that word, even though we know what it means, but no one is smart enough. What Aragorn says, no, let's say, stingy person are you, Aemir, to thus give Gondor the fairest thing in your realm. So Aragorn now feels safe to say out loud how fair Eowyn is and stuff, because if he'd have said that before, he would have he would have thought that was giving her encouragement. And then
Right.
Eowyn looked in the eyes of Aragorn and she said, wish me joy, my liege lord and healer. And he answered, I have wished thee joy ever since I first saw thee. It heals my heart to see thee now in bliss. So that's the closure between Eowyn and Aragorn.
Aragorn, yep.
That we know. And probably Aragorn's like, thank goodness. Thank goodness. That's good.
You're getting a raise, bro. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, he made him a prince.
Yeah, that's true.
But you're getting a bonus.
You're getting a bonus.
You're gonna get more chickens.
Here's all of Ithilien, a princehood, the top guard of the tower.
Yeah, you solved the problem, dude.
And you get the crazy shield maiden. Good job.
But yeah, and I'm sure he felt relief. But Aragorn, being a very genuine man, he meant what he said. He really was truly happy for her, and that's all he ever wanted for her. And there we go. And that's all we see of her in the books, except we know from the appendix that they do have a child. Was it
Mhm.
oh gosh, Elberoth or
That's
something like that?
that's that's what I was actually just looking through to find.
Elberon, I think is his name. I'm
Um,
assuming they had more children, but that's the only child that they mention because he wrote
let's see.
some stuff, and they said like the grandson of Elberon or something, who was the child of. Yeah, sorry if there's
There's
pages turning here.
Rio.
Yeah.
Do, 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 do. Oh my goodness! No, I want to find this now because it's gonna bug me if I don't.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
So yeah, as he's looking, I'm going to point out that in a letter, Tolkien does kind of give an outline of what Aragorn and Faramir were up to, and he also does comment on a question of whether or not Eowyn and Faramir were too quick to fall in love. That
Mm,
it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's just someone else. And he kind of gives a bit of a defense of what he did, but acknowledges that some people could think, yeah, that was a little too fast. But he says
right.
that, hey, that's what's in the book. So that, and shameless plug, I do have a video for that. So if you're interested, I have a video on that letter. Have you found it?
I haven't found it yet, but there was something I wanted to bring as I'm looking through this. There was something I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up about how you were talking about arranged marriages. I really think, or arranged or forced marriages. I think Tolkien really had a great animosity towards the concept
Mm-hmm.
because the way that he wrote Faramir and Eowyn is just incredibly lovely. It's very, very sweet. There's banter. There's a little bit of back and forth, tension. But I mean, it's incredibly. Um, I I hate using this term because it's so modern, but it's very consensual.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
but if you look in the first stage with a Red Hell and Ale, when Ael goes to ride out and chasing a red hell and their son Maglin, he encounters he encounters Cudrifin and Celegorm, and Celegorm flat out says, "We don't like people who take the daughters of the Noldor without our blessing." Like
Mm.
there's something there in Tolkien's writings where he's vehemently against that, and it's a reoccurring motif where he shows that as kind of like taking someone against their will or having something arranged is very taboo in the eyes of Tolkien. Like Ar-Pharazôn took Miriel forcefully
Mm.
and it was considered an evil deed. And then he finally shows in the third age, it's like, here's where it's good.
Yeah, this
Here's
is the
where
way
it's
it's
really
supposed to
nice.
be. Well, and
Um,
one could argue the same thing with Aragorn and Arwen was also a
yeah.
very consensual situation.
It was a very consensual situation, but if I recall correctly, he wasn't permitted to marry her until Sauron was defeated. If I recall correctly, that was Elrond's stipulation, I believe.
Yeah, but that was like the dad. It wasn't, yeah, but he
Yeah.
didn't like force anything on her, obviously. Well, hey, she was the older woman, anyways. It would have been the I'm terrible. It was the other way around.
Right.
But it's like, you don't have a choice, sir. Um, yeah.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't on this page. I thought it was on this page. The only thing that's mentioned, I'm in Appendix B right now. It just says that Meriadoc, called the Magnificent, becomes the master of buckling. Great gifts are sent to him by King Eomer and Lady Eowyn of Ithilien. Let's
Yeah.
see. I wonder if there's just like a family tree.
It was something like that. I mean, the only reason I know it by heart is because, I know this stuff. But
Right, right.
yeah. But yeah, they do obviously have children, and that's going to continue the idea. And I think it's also cool that that even though she is going to be a healer and all that and make a family as princess of Athelion, I'm assuming that being married to him that makes her a princess. She's also got power, if you will, in her own right, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
something that's going to be carried on. So it's not like she's going to a cage, because sometimes I've heard some say that she settled, like, that she was supposed to be a shield maiden and all that, and then she,
No,
no, just goes and becomes a housewife, and it's like, "No, no, no, no,
just pay
no, that's."
again. What I would tell people who would say that is like, pay attention to the character arc. That's absolutely not the
Mhm,
case. No, she
yeah,
she sees another better, more positive path that she is being guided on, in part by what she's seeing around her, just from her point of view, and also from Faramir, saying like, hey, bloodshed and conquest, and not necessarily conquest, but bloodshed and warfare is not the only path you have to take. So,
yeah.
me
Well,
find languages
and that when
hard.
she finally did face it, both she and Mary, they learned it wasn't quite exciting, that it was a horror what they were
Yeah.
experiencing.
Oh yeah.
And again, very much like, you know, anyone that I've known that's been in war, they they will
They
never say
either
that it's glorious.
Well, they either say nothing at all because they don't want to talk about it, or they will
Yeah,
explain in detail like it's a very, very terrible thing.
yeah,
Let me find it
yeah.
here.
Well, like, my grandfather, he fought in World War II, and
Hmm.
again, totally wouldn't talk about it and would always talk about war being awful, but he also always said, "But we had to do it." I mean,
Right.
what was going on? It's like, of course, it wasn't, so he, like, never regretted that he fought in World War II, but still, yeah, it's, it's not anything that's fun, and some of the letters that Tolkien has when he's writing to his son, who's fighting in World War II, is very poignant when you remember that he's actually talking to him in a time of war, and every letter that he writes to his son could be the last. Yeah,
Right. Oh,
yeah,
Elberon.
yeah, Elberon, yeah, huh?
Elberon. Yep. Second Prince of
And
Ithilien.
yay! And they don't mention any other siblings, but people popped out babies back then, so,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure that she had a lot more, but they just had the line of Athelian. So, yeah, so it's a new thing, and it's kinda like the vice president or something, or it's a role in itself, and I think that was really cool. So ends Eowyn.
So
They
ends
ride off
Eowyn.
the sunset. So, as we wind down this party, what are your thoughts? What did you like to say? Anything maybe that you haven't had a chance to, or maybe some things that came up as we discussed it?
I think we covered her really, really well. I'm going to reiterate this for about the thousandth time, but I mean, her character arc is incredible. It really,
Mhm,
really is. It's literally if anybody watches this who's like an aspiring writer, read the Lord of the Rings and check out the character of Eowyn and really educate yourself and study how Tolkien wrote her character arc, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same character arc, but it is the quintessential way to write a character
mhm,
arc. It really, really is. And anything I say is just going to be reiterating points I already made. But
mhm,
you can see parallels in how Tolkien wrote her with other characters that he's written, contrast with those characters and different decisions that they made. And her story is a very, very moving story, especially when you get to the end. You
mhm,
know, it's incredibly moving. It's a mix of tear jerking, but also at the same time very joyful. It's really, really, really damn good. You
mhm.
know, it's really great. What am I saying? Good. It's really great.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's a reason. It's like Miss Martin Muse said. It's like there's a reason why Tolkien is the S tier
Mhm.
of fantasy, and this character is a great example why,
Yeah,
and just how she was written.
yeah. I like to call it's almost deceptively simple, 'cause on the
Mm,
surface, you're like, "Oh, okay, girl goes out, girl does this," but no, it's just so many layers into.
so many layers, so many layers. Her character is legitimate. I heard I had one counselor a long time ago who describe people as like onions. There's a lot of different layers to their personalities, and or to their personality, and I think Eowyn is a great example of that. Like that, you know, there's the caring nature, there's the healing nature, there's things that she doesn't even know about herself that she has to find out later, but that are kind of hinted at as her story progresses. You know, it's incredible stuff. I never get tired of reading this stuff and talking about it, and fantastic one. Like we probably could have gone on another hour. Honestly,
yeah, exactly. I mean, I was thinking, oh, we'll go an hour or so, and next, 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Well, and eventually, of course, when we find the time and everything, we need to do what was it? I think you said Denethor is one to get into because there's far more to him in the books than in the
movies.
movie where he's just psycho going.
That's one. I want to do a stream with you about that, and it's also going to be a part of the video I'm making, the retrospective, because this is my personal, I guess you can call it a hot take, but my personal opinion is that if we're going to rank 1 and 2 on the characters that were done dirty by the Jackson trilogy, I actually put Denethor at number 1 and then Faramir at number 2.
Well, that is a hot take.
Isildur at number 3.
Oh, yeah, but well, it's just funny because I'm just like, I thought Faramir will always be number 1 because, but I know what you mean. I can grant you the point.
Preparation for this stream that we're doing right now actually kind of confirmed my own bias on that, because when the Gondorian comes to Theoden and it's like, Denethor sent the red arrow to you. We are in a time of need. That Denethor was not upset about the lighting of the beacons or anything like that. He actually was like trying to get help to Gondor. You know, he was trying to muster up a competent defense, and the movie just absolutely eviscerated his character.
Yeah, they never even talked about the role the Palantir played in what stuff was going on. So that might be something. Sorry, go ahead.
Apparently there's footage for that was never put in the films. Which is a shame, but
it is that, and not having the wedding. That I always want to see the wedding.
Well, not to go too deep into Denethor, but the thing that always bothered me is the fact of he is one of 2 men. Saruman couldn't even do it. He's one of 2 men who contended with the will of Sauron through the Palantir, and for the most part succeeded. It was really him thinking that Faramir had died that broke his spirits.
Yeah. But
you know, it's like, I watched the movies, and every single time Denethor's on screen, Denethor in quotation marks, I'm like, I audibly groan.
Yeah. However, since Valentine's Day is coming up, I must admit I enjoy all the Denethor to Faramir Valentines that are always subtle digs.
Those are so great.
I know, so I love those. I mean, I'm going to be spamming them all over Twitter, but I want to say thank you very much, Deeple 101. He says, I really enjoyed listening to you guys. Well, I appreciate that, and I got to just give the credit to Tolkien, and he's the one who was guiding this stream. Do we do this every Saturday? No, we do not. My schedule is a little bit erratic because reasons. So like we did this tonight because it worked out for both of us. But it is not a regular Saturday stream. But, I do appreciate the fact that you really enjoyed it and want to know that it's regular. And if you be sure to subscribe and put on the bell, maybe you can see when we're continuing this, is if you go to my Fantasy Tavern playlist, also you'll find a lot of things with High King Feanor and other discussions we've had, like I've had with Lady Gravemaster, not just, of course, the Tolkien stuff, which we do have, but all other fantasy, loads of fantasy. We've done Feist and loads of things. So I really do appreciate that. Sean Sue is saying, thank you. Insightful, learned a lot. Wow. Well, thank you. And I learned a lot from you. Thank you for being the fact checker on that. I just
I had
didn't know.
that had escaped. That had totally escaped my mind. I was like, that doesn't sound right. No, it turns out.
Yeah. So there you go. And that's why, always check, and we'll always say, hey, if we don't know what we're talking about, we'll say so. Because, I mean, we're just talking about the books right now. And there's just so much material that Tolkien has in his Legendarium. And it's fun stuff. And this is why I like to do these fantasy things or book things, because I think that sometimes TV fantasy has given people maybe a wrong impression of what are actually very good fantasy stories. Like if you just went by the Wheel of Time TV show, you would think it's the biggest bunch of garbage. Or, for example, the Rings of Prime, if you didn't know any better, you'd think, oh man, I'm not going to read the Silmarillion or anything. That sucks.
Right.
Of course, a lot of things like with Game of Thrones really gave people the wrong impression with what A Song of Ice and Fire, well, maybe if he ever finishes it. And what else did they butcher? Terry Brooks and stuff. So their fantasy, a lot of the great fantasy that we know, its medium is the books. Its medium is novels. Like you think Conan the Barbarian, and then you go and read one of Robert E. Howard's stories, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Right. Well, it's like I always say, fantasy isn't just a genre; it's a description. And the only way to really enjoy fantasy is through novelization. It's not through movies or TV, because what you are experiencing when you are reading something like The Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia or even Harry Potter or the Wheel of Time series, you are experiencing your own fantasy of what that world is like. It's and that's the only really true way to, it's one of those, and I guess the same can be said for science fiction as well, but it's one of those fantasy is one of those really unique genres that also kind of describes itself in kind of not a meta way, but it's just it not only describes what the genre is, but also describes what the reader is experiencing.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, it's like, listen, because they're few and far between, but people who haven't seen the movies or haven't got, or, and have, God forbid, watched like Rings of Power or have thought about doing that. I always like stop them. I'm like, no, read the books. Like you have to read the books first, before you do any of that. That way a person's imagination, their fantasy of what the world is like, isn't tarnished in a way. That's why I thank my dad every day, because he made me read the books before we went and saw the movies. I was 10 years old at the time, and he told me, he said no, son, you're gonna read these before you go to see those movies, because you need to experience what it actually is like.
Correct. Of course, the exception being if you're talking about something like Star Wars, where that is the primary communicator of that particular fantasy.
Right.
So there are some exceptions, but very, very small. And you watch the movies first before reading the books. And many people did too. I think in many ways it got people to read it, so that's a great thing. But I agree. I'm very happy that I read the books before I saw them. Well, I read them long before. And of course we have some more butchering upcoming with what goodness knows what they're going to do to Narnia, because unlike
I forgot about that.
Tolkien stuff well, I mean, Narnia truly, without a doubt, is a one-to-one allegory, and I'm like, how can they change that without just completely destroying it? It's just
they're going to eviscerate it. It's going to be bad. I really, I'm such a pessimist now about all these adaptations. I just want them to stop. It's like, you guys, the problem is they don't have people that are working on these projects that actually give a damn about the source material, and they're in it for their own, whether it be social or financial or what have you, agenda. They're either going to want to pump out something that preaches to people, or they're going to want to pump out something that they think is going to earn them a quick buck. There's absolutely no regard for the original story itself.
Nope.
And it's so demoralizing. But at the same time, I think to myself, it's like, even with Rings of Power season 3, that apparently is now officially in production. It took them forever to announce that. Well, did you hear the news about the viewership for season 2?
I bet it was very low.
They from transitioning through the first season all the way through the second season, they lost 60% of their minutes watched.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's brutal. But that's season 3 is going to be on the way, and it's going to be the same. I'm thinking I'm going to like do like poly market wagers, not real ones, but just like maybe polls on X, and just be like, hey, so what craziness do you think they're going to put into season 3 that's going to make absolutely no sense and goes completely against Tolkien's lore for season 3?
Yeah, I sincerely believe it probably would have been canceled if they had not spent so much money to get the rights. They basically have to keep going with it.
But they really hamstrung themselves by signing a 5-year commitment to it. That's where they went south. If they hadn't done that, if they would have said, we're going to go for 3 seasons and then 5, maybe, depending on the success of the show, I think season 3 would be the last one. I really, really do. But they're committed to 5. So it's like, we got another 8 years of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they really thought, because they misunderstood what fantasy was, and they just thought, if we just put in hobbits and Galadriel and stuff, people will watch it. And they didn't realize that part of the reason why the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was, it mostly followed the books. I mean, it really did. They didn't change Frodo or Sam, or they didn't have Frodo had a younger sister who was the one that helped with the ring, and it's like it says, Sean Sue says, whatever faults Lord of the Rings movies, Peter Jackson clearly loved the books and wanted to be respectful to them, at least in, again, those movies he did. And they just don't understand that fantasy is more than just hobbits, elves, and pretty scenery. And I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
It's a hubris.
It's like I've had a single debate with a Rings of Power fan. It was just a madhouse. But the one thing I tried to explain to this gentleman, and I don't think he either wanted to address the point head on, or he just kept on trying to deflect away from it, is that I can go in the appendix and put on the Lord of the Rings movies, and I can follow events chronologically as they occur in the book. I can't do that with Rings of Power.
No. Well,
I can't even do that, and that's just the basics.
Yeah.
That's not even getting into the grander details. That's just the basics, like timeline of events and where characters are at and what they are doing. For the most part, there's obviously places where the movies kind of deviate. But like, for instance, the example I used was the Fellowship going through Moria, Frodo at Weathertop, various different things. It's like, these happen in the chronological order that they happened. And with Rings of Power, this is not the case. There's not a single thing that lines up. But
yay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yay. Ancient One is here. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I will never understand. Yeah. Well, it was a cash grab. What can we say? And it failed miserably. Well, what will not fail miserably is I have a February challenge. I just got done with the January challenge, which was different action films, and there will be a live stream discussing the 10 action films we watched during my January challenge. My February challenge, this is very simple, and so far I've gotten some pushback from those that know, but gentlemen, your challenge for February, if you choose to accept it, is you have to watch the complete 1995 Pride and Prejudice. Can you do it, High King Feanor?
You know what? You know what I'm gonna do? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna let the wife know about this challenge, and I'm gonna put it on with her in the living room, and I'll be like, listen, you're gonna watch this with me. We're gonna sit through this whole thing together,
Do
okay?
it. Do it. Yes. It's funny because for the ladies, most women, it's like, it's not a challenge to rewatch Pride and Prejudice. Are you kidding me? But yeah,
Yeah.
uh, I I think it's a good one. I mean, there's a lot. You talk about character arcs. There is some really good character arcs in this, and it's only 6 hours, so you can watch each different episode. And yeah, so this is a very simple challenge. Everyone should be able to do this. Um, oh yeah, uh-oh, we got a big fat no here. Yeah,
No.
I had other people saying, "Can we do the what was it? The Pride, and Prejudice and Zombies?" And I said, "Well, you can watch that, but you also got to watch the real one." We're not well.
Right.
Obviously, there's several different adaptations, but this is the one. And I always tell men, take notes, take notes. The ladies like this, but. But before we continue, we have a $2 super chat from Deeple101. Thanks for the entertainment tonight. Have fun all. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for the super chat. I mean, I'm nothing without the chat. I mean, you guys are great and you've stayed with us, and I've really enjoyed going on this journey with you all, and of course, with the king himself. So you, sir, thank you for that. You get a rose. If I wait, where'd it go? I've
Uh-oh.
lost oh, there it is. I found my rose. There we go.
What to say? We're having technical difficulties. Getting the rose up.
Difficulties. We have interference, and I can't blame it on the cat because he just gave up and he's climbing all over everything. So in any case, well, thank you so much, High King Feanor, for being here and going through this. This has been so much fun. I just love Lord of the Rings so much, and I love, of course, Eowyn. You've said, of course, obviously, you have a video upcoming. And is there anything else that you can tell us that's about in the future?
So right now I'm working on. It's going to be very much a. I'm kind of taking inspiration. I'm sure you know about the YouTuber Mahler. Runs the Every Frame of Pause podcast.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah, I've actually streamed with him before. Yeah.
He is wont to do very, very long videos reviewing movies. We're talking 3, 4, 5, sometimes 8 hours long. The video that I'm working on right now, the retrospective of the Jackson films, which I am going to be calling the Jackson Trilogy Fandom Sacred Cow, is probably going to be about 3 to 4 hours long, and it's going to be, it's going to be a long boy. What it's going to entail is kind of how choices that Jackson made ultimately created the poor adaptations that we have today, and that the Jackson films kind of get away with a lot of stuff largely due to nostalgia and the fact of how well those films were made, because there's no denying that they're wonderfully crafted films. Mm-hmm. But not to go into too much detail, but that's essentially going to be the theme of the video, so to speak. So and I'm still in the process of working on that, but give it a couple months and I'll have it done. I'm a terrible procrastinator. I work all the time, so
well, videos are hard to make.
Yeah
It takes a while.
Yeah
All right. We've inspired Deeple to reread favorite chapter when the Grey Company arrives and tells Aragorn to take the paths of the dead.
Oh, it's so good.
And he has a question number for you. He said, "Those are rookie numbers. Gotta just challenge Mahler and broke on length." Oh dear, would it be 5 hours long or 24 hours long?
His longest, I think, is like 9.
Ooh, yeah.
I'd have to look. It's one of his unbridled videos he did. I think it might be his one on the not the Rise of Skywalker. What was the really bad one that Rian Johnson made?
That was The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi. Yeah, that one. I'm pretty sure is like 9 hours long.
Dear me. Well, there you go. Yeah, and I know about how work. Well, because like I said, I haven't streamed as much this week because told you, I had a bunch of contracts this week that I was fulfilling, but
Mm.
next week I might be able to do some more. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I've seen you around. You've been on Nordpolio. Weren't you on Nordpolio's? Not
I was
Polio, Nordpolio's.
Nerdpolio. I'm gonna tell him you called him that.
Nordpolio. He's gonna kill me. No, I think you've
Nerdpolio.
talked Lord of the Rings. I think over on there, or Rings of
Yep.
Prime, or something. Yeah.
I've been on with him. I've been oh goodness.
Well, Lady Greymaster, I know
When
you made an appearance during Rings of Prime. That was
Yep. I was on with
butchery.
her. I was on Wednesday After Dark with Sevi and the crew there. I was also on Dames and Dorks
Oh yeah.
once as well. So
Yeah, so keep
which
your eyes open. Sorry.
yeah, so I'll be streaming here and there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so we just don't know. Yeah, so just stay tuned to his social media and stuff. Yeah, Dames and War, they haven't I think they're on a sabbatical or something. I enjoy being on with them. They're good
yeah,
gals.
they're on holiday last I heard when I talked to one of the members there. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're just doing their own thing right now.
Okay, that's cool. So, anyways, and you can find me here, Miss Smart Muses, where I talk about what makes me laugh, makes me cry, makes me happy, makes me sad, or just really ticks me off. Upcoming, I think I've already said that we're going to be doing a stream with Stieg about the 10 movies that we watched for our challenge. So, even if you haven't been a part of my action movie challenge, if you like action movies, you can come in and share in the chat what your favorite ones are or ones that you have watched recently. I watched so many movies in this challenge that I had never watched. And so many dudes in my life are like, you've never seen this, never seen that. It's like, no, I haven't. I'm not an action movie chick. I mean, I've seen some, but that's what made it a bit of a challenge for me. That's why I turned it around on people. It's like, now you all got to watch Pride and Prejudice. Some more letters of J.R. Tolkien upcoming. And I'm sure with the C.S. Lewis, I will be having a lot to say about that. But yeah, that's what's upcoming. And sometimes I do musings on just things I think about, like psychology, narcissism, etc. So those are my musings. Catholic Explaining will be continuing. We're going to be doing the 10 Commandments. I do those as premieres, not as live streams. And I'll have a lot to say about Snow White with the upcoming abomination. the trailer showed up. I saw a movie the other day. I was like, this is the worst thing I have ever seen, and I've seen some bad stuff on movies. So it's going to be a beautiful disaster. Let's see. Oh boy, and you can handle 10 hours. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. We have been going for 3 hours. Once again, thank you so much, High King Feanor, for being here. Thank you for everyone that's been in the chat. Thank you. You see Ancient One. Yay, Ancient One. And Deeple 101. We've had loads of people, lots of new people, and that's great. Sean Sue was with us. Salty Traveling Sea came in. Nordporial was here. He gave me a super chat. Thank you very much. So to Deeple, Architectural Outcast, thank you for being here and helping us out. That was a very good find. Anti-Derivative Jill, Dadman Walking, and many, many more. Oh, RRTNZ from New Zealand. Thank you for the $10. And for the super chat from Nordpolio. Oh my gosh, I did it again. That's what happens when I've been talking all day. I know he's going to kill me.
Right.
Everyone make an AI or something. No, that's terrible. And again, if I missed anyone, it was not intentional. Oh, Dega Outlaw. He also, thank you. It's very difficult sometimes because things jump. It's never an intentional slight. And as I said, thank you to the king. And I guess our cats who were participants in this stream behind the scenes.
Right.
No, I don't have a raid in mind, Ancient One, but I thank you for the thought. I'm going to go ahead and end because my brain cells are starting to fry, but it's been so much fun. So have a great day, everyone. Have a great day, and be certain to reread the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy.